Morning, it's 6 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of June.
This is Breakfast with Ellie Costello and Nana Aquia. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister continues to avoid media scrutiny over the weekend as the Conservatives today pledged to recruit 8,000 new police officers.
Labour pledges to help working parents by creating 3,000 new school-based nurseries.
Tributes are flowing for TV doctor Michael Mosley after his body was found after a 4-day search in Greece.
A night of election bombshells in Europe as Emmanuel Macron calls a snap French election as right-wing parties surge.
And in the sport this morning, Harry Kane called the loss to Iceland a nice wake-up call ahead of the Euros. It may well be. It was a wet Montreal as Max Verstappen won the Canadian Grand Prix yesterday, and Carlos Alcaraz becomes only the 7th player in history to win Grand Slams on 3 different services as he won the French Open yesterday.
Hello, it's a cloudy and damp start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine on the way this afternoon. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
A very good morning to you, and we start with election fever, not just here in the UK, but across the continent as well.
Yeah, the Prime Minister is yet to face the media, scrapping all interviews over the weekend in the aftermath of the D-Day debacle disaster, leaving others, including party chairman Richard Holden, to answer questions, including this car crash interview.
How do you answer the charge? It just looks like an appalling stitch-up, and you are part of a self-serving elite.
This interview is about Emily Thornberry's comments today, and when she admitted that it's going to be our children across the country who pay the price for Labour's decision.
I come back to the question. It looks like a stitch-up. Chairman of the party, short list of 1, just before nominations close. How is that not an appalling stitch-up and anti-democratic?
Emily Thornberry today has completely admitted.
So you can't justify the way you have been parachuted into Basildon and Billericay. You're not denying it's a stitch-up and it's anti-democratic.
Emily Thornberry today has admitted...
I'm going to stop you now. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You said in an interview earlier this year you were bloody loyal to the North East. What happened to that?
John, I've already answered these questions.
No, you haven't.
But nonetheless, today the Conservatives have promised a new £650 billion policing plan, which would put 8,000 new officers on the street.
While Labour today are promising to save parents £400 a year as they commit to delivering free breakfast clubs in primary schools. And
a big day for the Liberal Democrats, as Ed Davey is set to launch his party's manifesto later on this morning, the first of the major parties to do so. Well, throughout the election campaign, we're going to be hearing from people across the United Kingdom about what really matters to you. And today we met with Marie Carmen from Leamington Spa.
My name is Marie Carmen, I'm 32 and I'm from Leamington Spa. I'm a health and fitness coach for mums and I used to be a nurse at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. So I know the government have announced the fact that they're going to increase childcare hours for children younger, and actually I think my son, who's now 1, qualifies for that in September, so I really hope that continues. Also more support around enterprise. You know, I'm currently raising investment for my business, and the way the economy is at the moment, the climate, it's quite hard. I know there are things around SEIS, EIS, but I think if businesses could have more support to grow, you know, financially that would be really helpful. I've got 3 small children, 2 at school, 1 at nursery. You know, cost of living is huge. Like our food bill, if I'm lucky to get it under £100 a week, you know, and I cook from scratch, I'd be, you know, I'm lucky. So I think more help, you know, with day-to-day things, you know, when is actually food prices going to come down? I know speaking to a lot of my clients, they find the same. You know, just day-to-day things. If you want to take your children on activities, you want to go on holiday, just everything feels really inaccessible at the moment. When I was nursing, I used to vote Labour. You know, they have always been the party for the NHS, for, you know, teachers and stuff. So I hope that, you know, I hope that is the case. If Conservative can demonstrate more for, you know, enterprise and those key things that I've just spoke about, potentially them. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not a massive fan of Keir Starmer. So I don't know.
Well, really good to hear from Mary there. We're going to be hearing from voices of real people throughout the election campaign here on GB News. But there's lots to get through, isn't there? So let's discuss all of the above with Deputy Editor at The Spectator, Freddie Gray. Good to see you this morning, Freddie. Where do we begin? Should we start with Richard Holden, that bizarre clip there where he refused to answer questions about being parachuted into that safe seat? Any questions about Rishi Sunak as well? And then the Prime Minister's been in hiding this weekend, it appears.
Well, Emily Thornberry has been... I can't go through with it.
Very good.
It was terrible, wasn't it? Another terrible Tory moment in this election campaign. It just goes from bad to worse. I think, you know, Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives think that they can get on the front foot a little bit today with crime, 8,000 more police bobbies on the beat. They think this is a good idea because it can tap into something they feel they've already achieved on, which is getting 20,000 bobbies back on the beat. I'm not sure it's going to work because what everyone's talking about is still Rishi Sunak being missing over the weekend. The D-Day debacle will carry on. It is going to go down as one of the great gaffes in political history. It's not good. And the fact that there's rumours flying around this weekend that Rishi Sunak might quit, I don't think those are true. But the very fact that those rumours are flying around shows you the sort of state that the Tory party's in at this very crucial moment in an election campaign.
What about the Labour Party then? Because yesterday, Emily Thornberry, because they keep talking about the 6,500 new teachers that they're going to do so they can get the 20% VAT on schools. But now they're talking about spending this on breakfast clubs. So the Labour Party themselves don't sound very united in the excess, the VAT that they expect to receive from these schools. Sounds like they're spending it on anything. No,
it's a great shame that the Conservative Party aren't in a better position to attack these Labour plans because they don't add up on a lot of things. On childcare, it sounds like they are all over the place at the moment. But the problem for the Tories, again, is that the Labour-friendly press will give them the nursery places headline. That's the headline they want to get out. It's not a bad one. I think as far as voter concerns go, crime is more important, so perhaps the Tories would be in an advantage this morning in a normal election cycle, but this isn't a normal election cycle because the Tories are struggling so badly.
There are questions, though, about Labour's funding plans, aren't there? I mean, the SNP challenging Sir Keir Starmer over the weekend, saying that they need to be straight with the public and explain that Labour are going to axe some public services. Sir Keir Starmer says, well, he didn't refuse to rule that out, actually.
Well, I mean, as electorally speaking, they don't need to be straight with the public, and that's why they're not being straight with the public, because they can say pretty much one thing or another thing, and it doesn't matter because their lead in the polls is so big. And this is a real problem. You know, we saw it last week with Angela Rayner on Trident, saying, I don't support the policy that I support, was effectively her line. And yet nobody picks them up on it because they're in this hugely advantageous position electorally.
What do you think we're going to see from the manifestos this week? We're expecting to see the Lib Dems out today, Tories out tomorrow, Labour's will be out on Thursday. What do you predict we'll see from them?
I think the Lib Dems are picking up a bit of traction. I think they are having a better election campaign than a lot of people acknowledge, despite some ridiculous...
Do you think it's just been a bit silly?
Yes, a little bit silly, but I think the Davey video was probably the most successful social media stunt of the campaign so far. His one talking about his family and how much he suffered as a man. I think the Tory manifesto is a chance for them to perhaps get on the front foot again because they think that Labour will... If Labour mess it up, if Labour have as bad a manifesto as they've had in previous election cycles, the Tories can get on the front foot. But the way things are going, would you bet against a major mess up in the Tory manifesto this week?
What about reform? Because I keep reading on social media, there are more and more people joining reform constantly every single day. Nigel Farage was posting and people were saying 40,000 people so far. Every 3 seconds, how many people are joining reform. Is there any chance that reform could actually become the opposition?
I think there is a chance, yes. And I think if you look at what happened in Europe last night with all these right-wing parties doing so well, and insurgent, anti-establishment right-wing parties doing so well, it's not... Everybody thinks that sort of Britain's going to be the outlier because we're about to probably vote for a Labour government when the rest of Europe seems to be going right. But actually, I'm not sure we are. I mean, if Reform overtake the Conservative parties in this general election, which could well happen, on current trends is happening, you're going to see the same story playing out in Britain that is playing out in Europe, which is a kind of establishment centre just about clinging on, while a right-wing party, an insurgent right-wing party, does better and better and better and becomes the mainstream. And we have to think, I think we have to think about whether we call these parties far-right anymore. There's a big debate to be had about that, because by any standards, they're mainstream now. So are we calling them far-right because we have some objective idea about immigration policies? Or are we calling them far-right because it's become a sort of lazy journalistic way of attacking them? And I think it's probably more the latter, and that's probably going to have to change.
What do you make of Swilla Braverman talking today in The Times, saying that it's time for the Tories to embrace Nigel Farage? She said it's time to unite the right, and she says there's not much difference between Farage's policies and those of the Tories.
I think she's right. But I think calling for the Tories to embrace Farage during an election cycle is an odd thing for her to do. But I think the right will probably have to unite, particularly if the Conservative Party are kind of face this extinction level event. And what Labour want is a split right. And Labour will win for a decade to come if we have a split right. I think that the Tory party over history has always adapted. So I think it will adapt, and it will probably learn to kind of remodel itself around sort of not necessarily Nigel Farage, but around reforms policies, and particularly on immigration, actually doing something, not just creating hundreds of headlines every week that do nothing.
I wanted to ask you about Macron, because he's called it a snap election after surge of the far right. Is this, you know, from your knowledge of the French political system, is this a wise move for him? A lot of people are saying that this was madness.
It's an extremely bold move. And Macron, I'm no fan of Macron, but he is a very, very dynamic politician. He's always doing something, he's quick to do it. So it was quite impressive to do it that quickly, I think, to make that decision. I think it's going to be, well, I think his plan is probably to get Le Pen into the fold. And I think he was hoping, it's not going to happen, I don't think, but I think he's hoping to make Le Pen Prime Minister when they trounce him in the elections, and then effectively asphyxiate her within government. So she'll show these are the people in government now, and look, they're not doing anything, they're making everything worse. Everything's bad. By the time you get to a next presidential election cycle, some people in France think that he's going to go for, he's going to try and get a referendum for a mandate for a third term, which is quite likely if you can see how egomaniac Emmanuel Macron's been over the years. But I think that what's probably going to happen is this guy, Jordan Bardella, the sort of new emergent figure in Le Pen's National Rally party, he will probably go into government, assuming that National Rally win very big, which it looks like they will. Judging on last night's election results, they could win spectacularly. But so I think Jordan Bardella, this young, more dynamic figure in the National Rally, more dynamic than Le Pen, you could say, I think he will probably go into government, and I think it will be, could end up sort of paralysing Macron's presidency. It's a huge gamble.
It's a huge gamble.
Yeah, and probably one he'll lose.
Oh, OK. Freddie Gray, thank you very much. Good to see you this morning. Now, we've been talking about this morning, haven't we, just before we came on air. Just such sad news. Obviously, tributes flowing in for the TV doctor Michael Mosley, whose body was found yesterday on the Greek island of Symi after going missing on Wednesday.
Now, his wife, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley, paid tribute to her wonderful husband, who said that they had been incredibly lucky. They've had a wonderful life together, while colleagues and friends have described him as immediately likeable, genuinely funny.
Well, joining us now is the travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder. It's just the most desperately sad story, isn't it, Simon?
Oh, it certainly is. And my heart goes out to Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley and her family and their friends, of course. Just really, really sad to lose such a great man. And I think that's the main thing about these tributes to Michael Mosley. Everybody has been saying what great work he did. Yes, as a broadcaster, he was extremely talented, but also what he was doing was just teaching us about our bodies, teaching us about the wider world. And I think there will be a lot of people watching now who are, yes, they did take one step towards making their lives healthier. And it was all thanks to the unique way in which Michael Mosley helped us understand things, not least because, of course, he experimented on his own body in order to demonstrate the points that he wanted to make. So a great communicator, and absolutely tragic that he has been lost to his family and to the wider world at such a young age. He had so much more to give.
It really is so sad. And I mean, it does highlight the dangers if you are somewhere unfamiliar, the things that you must make sure that you have with you. Because I was so upset listening, thinking, I wish that he'd taken a mobile phone. I was thinking, oh, what if, his wife must be devastated. If you are somewhere unfamiliar, what are the main things that you need to make sure, especially in that kind of heat, that you take with you?
Can I just say that I am absolutely in tune with how he was feeling and the decision that he made. It might be seen as irresponsible, and of course, with hindsight, we can all look back and say, yes, of course, he should have had his phone with him. Yes, he should have made sure he had plenty of water, and ideally, he should have been hiking with somebody else, since he was, as his wife says, taking a really challenging hike. However, he was the sort of person who was very, very good at understanding risks, at knowing the issues that he could possibly face. And I can just see that it's a beautiful day. Yes, it's hot, but he's confident in his own abilities because he's shown time and time again that he's a great survivor. So I can see that he would set off like this. I think all of us, looking at the terrain that there is, the extreme heat, which currently is affecting Simi and other parts of the Eastern Mediterranean, you would, I think now, think again and consider, am I properly equipped? Have I got all I need in case there's a fall or I feel weak or whatever? But ultimately, it's a beautiful island. It was a fine day. He felt that he wasn't too far from, he wasn't far from safety. It was just, I'm so sorry to say, misadventure. Something went tragically wrong, and it has ended with the loss of a great husband, a great father, and a great communicator who helped us all improve our health.
And those tributes are pouring in this morning, Simon. He does seem to be adored, not only as a doctor, as a professional, but as a person as well, very highly regarded. There are questions on many of the papers, and he really is on every front page of the papers this morning, but questions being asked about why it took so long to find him. Why was it a 5-day search operation? And we know that it was a very intense one. What can you tell us about the terrain on the island that might have made that quite complicated for people searching for Michael?
Those of us who've been lucky enough to go to these Greek islands, the really quite extreme east ones close to the Turkish mainland, will know that they are characterized by being very hilly, very rocky. There's very rough scrub there. It is a difficult area to search. Yes, we knew roughly where he was heading, but ultimately, and I've done this, my goodness, and I genuinely thought there, but for fortune go I. I've been in the position of having making a decision about walking in the hills. I do quite a lot of walking and climbing, and on my own, I can see that I could quite possibly do the same. And very, very sadly, well, we now know the result after, of course, days of hoping that there would be some other explanation for it. But it's a wide and difficult area. Yes, they were bringing in drones to help with the search, but ultimately, if somebody goes missing and they don't, you've got no way of tracking him apart from really quite some CCTV footage, which doesn't really tell you very much, then I'm afraid it is just a matter of keeping looking until, well, the terrible moment yesterday when his body was found. So, so sad. And my I hope is that the family of Dr. Michael Mosley will take comfort from the fact that he was in a wonderful location and that he was with the people he loved. And like many people over the years, he was just unlucky.
Yeah, Simon Calder, thank you very much indeed.
Right, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom.
And a woman in her 40s remains in hospital with life-threatening injuries after a ride malfunctioned at a fun fair in South London on Saturday. The Lambeth Country Show in Brockwell Park has reopened, but some rides remain cordoned off. An investigation is underway, led by the Metropolitan Police.
Well, Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has resigned from Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Last month, Mr Gantz set a deadline of the 8th of June for Mr Netanyahu to lay out how Israel would achieve its 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas rule in Gaza. Mr Netanyahu responded to the resignation on Twitter, saying this is not the time to quit the campaign, this is the time to join forces.
Former Scotland and Liverpool defender Alan Hansen is seriously ill in hospital. The club is providing support to the family of the 68-year-old, who retired in 1991 to start a successful career as a television pundit. In a statement, Liverpool FC said its thoughts are with their legendary former captain, and they've requested that the family's privacy be respected.
And political parties have been urged to prioritise potholes in their manifesto commitments. The campaign group, named the Pothole Partnership, has called for a limit on temporary repairs and for funding to tackle potholes to be accelerated and increased. The group warns that damage to vehicles caused by poor roads is at a 5-year high, which is costing the economy £14.4 billion per year.
So sad about Dr. Mosley.
Oh, I know,
isn't it?
it's so tragic as well.
It really is.
Such a brilliant person, you know.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you're reflecting on the views today. gbnews.com/you'll-say. I've got one here from Anton, who said, sad news about Dr. Mosley. I've never actually heard of him, but I know from the tributes that he was extremely popular. And I've been struck by that as well. I think everybody across the board just has nothing but wonderful things to say about him. Sasha says, it's so sad to lose the lovely Dr. Michael Mosley. In tribute, I think I'm going to have a go at his advice and start the Fast 800, which is one of his diet plans. I'll really miss just one thing. He is so clever at communicating.
Oh, this is one from Josephine. Oh, it's gone now. Lovely to see Nana. And she should be a permanent breakfast presenter. I don't think so.
There you go.
It's very early. It's very early for me, I've got to be honest with you. Who else have we got? Yes, again, lots of people, those tributes are still coming in as well. Interesting story about potholes, though. Have you noticed? I have noticed that there are more and more potholes. I actually blame it on electric cars.
Do you?
Because they're so heavy.
Oh. Yeah, that could be it.
I haven't got one. I can't do electric cars. Have you got an electric car?
I don't have an electric car. My mum does, and it's not great because it doesn't really have very good range. You can't get very far in an electric car. It's fine if you're doing local, nipping to the shops and back, but you can't do long journeys in them. And I was in France last week. Not a pothole in sight.
Really?
It was lovely.
Really? Did they have a lot of electric cars in France?
I don't know.
Interesting.
I'll have to go back and find out for you. But no potholes. It was nice, actually, to just have that little bit of a break when you're driving along. Yeah, exactly. Do keep those views coming in, gbnews.com/you'll-say.
Right, let's get your weather update with Ellie Glazier.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe one or two across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still one or two showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south and still in those low double figures further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to make this summer really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's £15,000 in cash and then a whole host of treats. But of course, you do have to be in it to win it. So here's all the details that you need.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash, £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer, plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck with that one. Well, still to come, it's the sport with Paul Coit. This is Breakfast on GB News with Nana and Ellie.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes,
she could have said Storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's just gone 6:30. I'm Nana Aquia, this is Ellie Costello. It's time to go through all the latest sports news with broadcaster Paul Coit. Right, Paul, so what should we start with? Should we start with Manchester United?
Shall we do that? Should
Yes.
we start a bit of Manchester United?
Yes, why not?
Thomas Tuchel. So Thomas Tuchel, who was the manager of Chelsea and was the manager of Bayern Munich and has left Bayern Munich. So there's all these names that have been linked to the job at Manchester United, which is still, by the way, there is no job there officially at the moment because Erik ten Hag is still there. But the rumours that have been going around for months and months is that he's going to get the elbow. And you kind of think, well, he's still in a job.
So this is the job for manager?
Yeah, this is the job for manager. But he's still in the job as we speak. But if I was him, I'd be like, well, what's going on? Because apparently Sir Jim Ratcliffe, who's the owner of Ineos and now has the major stake in Manchester United when it comes to running the football side, he's the man that's in charge of all football at Manchester United. So he's been meeting, apparently, other managers and representatives of managers to replace Erik ten Hag, who currently is still the manager. You follow me?
Not really. I lost you a long time ago.
OK.
I lost you at the beginning.
What was that, when I said hello?
Yeah,
I thought so. Anyway,
lost you at hello.
Let's tell you about Harry Kane. Harry Kane, now, the Euros begin. You are familiar with the Euros then, Nana, aren't you? You know what that's all about.
What was that? What is it, €1 for how many pounds?
Well, close enough. So the Euros then gets underway on Friday. Scotland starts it off against Germany. It's been played in Germany. And England will be there, of course, but on Friday, just a disaster. It was awful that England lost 1-0 at Wembley to Iceland.
Quite poor, wasn't it?
It was pretty poor. But the thing is, Harry Kane has said, look, it's a wake-up call before the Euros, which I could sit here and go, it's a disgrace. I actually believe that. I think it's probably OK. I think it is a wake-up call.
You think that's a wake-up call?
Yeah. I think it's going to be all right.
Isn't it a little bit embarrassing? I didn't think Iceland were very good. You know, like when you hear they lose against sort of Brazil or some of those sort of teams, that's OK. But Iceland, how good are Iceland?
They're not very good. In fact, they're pretty poor. But no, they're OK. But the thing is, you don't want to be losing to Iceland. But what I want to say is that before any major tournament, and even at the start of tournament, it's all about momentum. So once they get going and get moving along, then things will be fine. So a friendly before a championship doesn't matter. So it's nothing really to worry about. So, for example, France drew 0-0 with Canada, and you would expect that France were going to win that. Italy beat Bosnia 1-0, so that's nothing impressive. Portugal, who are also the favourites along with England, they lost 1-0 to Croatia. Croatia are a good side.
Well, Croatia are good.
Yeah, but all I'm saying is that pre-tournament, it doesn't really matter. So everybody's getting their knickers in a twist. There's nothing really to worry about.
And England are still favourites, aren't they? Or one of the favourites?
They are, without doubt. Without this.
Really?
I think after that, people are a little bit worried, and also the fact that Jack Grealish has been left out. But England are favourites.
Why did he leave out Jack Grealish?
Because he hasn't played as well for Manchester City as he has done in the past. He hasn't started as many games. And but the thing is, he played in a friendly and looked very good. But it's just Southgate's choice. Doesn't think that he's going to be right for England. I'm surprised, but there you go.
Yeah,
so anyway, we get underway. It's Friday night is when the Euros begin, and then England will play first on Sunday.
Right. That's quite exciting.
Should we look at the Canadian Grand Prix?
Yeah, little word about the Canadian Grand Prix. Mixed weather condition. It was very wet. It was very wet, and then it was dry, and then it was wet, and so then it affects pit stops, and then it affects tyres, and also it had been stopped a few times. So Max Verstappen, the Dutchman, won again. So anyway, it was tough though. Lando Norris from McLaren was second. He wasn't helped by the safety car, actually. Look at the rain there. I mean, you don't want to be driving at 200 miles an hour in that, do you? Really?
I don't
George
know.
Russell was
I think it
third.
would be fun in one of those cars.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's a look at that. That's not rain, by the way. That's champagne. All the wetness around there. Lewis Hamilton came fourth. Best finish of the season for him. He said his worst ever drive.
Do you know, you don't hear much from Lewis Hamilton these days. Everyone was talking about him. Is he still doing well?
Well, he's not doing as well as he could, not doing as well as he can or has done. But under Mercedes, it's about the cars. But he moves to Ferrari next year.
Okay.
So it's expected that things are going to start going like that again. But he's still there, still a good driver, just not getting the results, but because of Red Bull, who dominate at the moment. So it's all about the cars. A little bit about the French Open.
Yeah, tennis.
Carlos Alcaraz beat Alexander Zverev, who's actually still never won a major, Alexander Zverev.
No.
He has won, but the thing is, Alcaraz is 21 years old. He's only the 7th person to win on all 3 surfaces. So you've got your hard court surface, which over in the States and Australia, grass court in Wimbledon, and then clay court, which is in France. So there's 6 other... Is this worth me having a go at? 6 other great tennis players, only 6 others, who have actually won titles on all 3.
Is Bjorn Borg one of them?
Bjorn Borg gave him the trophy yesterday and has won the French Open 6 times, but he's not one of them.
OK.
Think around Borg time.
OK,
American?
Jimmy Connors.
Jimmy Connors is 1.
OK, let me see.
Novak Djokovic.
2.
McEnroe.
Nope.
Nadal.
Yes.
Who else have we got?
Federer.
Federer's got to be
Federer's
Federer,
4.
of course.
This is going very well. We've got 3 to get.
Three
Oh, no, it's only 2 to get. So we've got famous...
Boris Becker.
Boris Becker, closer in the right era. American. Andre.
Agassi.
Agassi. One more, and I'm going to give you that one. A famous other Swede, played just after Borg. If you get this, I'll be very impressed.
Go on, Nana.
What does it begin with?
Mats
Wilander. Mats Wilander.
Mats Wilander.
Yes.
Very good.
You weren't expecting
Nana
that.
knows their tennis.
I'm still trying to work out the German had this wooden racket. My parents, I wanted a metal
It's not
racket.
Michael is it?
No. I really wanted a metal racket. And my parents on my birthday, I thought, oh my God, this is it. My dad gave me this wooden thing with this brushed white, and it's this German player I'd never heard of
Are you sure he was
before.
German?
He was, or maybe he could have been Swedish. Or Danish.
Well, that narrows it down slightly. He's got a funny name, is what you're saying.
I was so angry.
Right, well, look, I'm going to find out the name of this player. One more for you. Now, Scotland have arrived in Germany.
Yes.
So, Scotland, for the Euros, they've arrived at Garmisch-Partenkirchen, which is a beautiful skiing resort in the Alps. So, John McGinn, the captain of Scotland, has arrived there and decided to celebrate in true Bavarian style. Shall we have a look?
Yes.
Oh, look at that.
The blue.
Well, that was just a lucky guess there. It was the Scotland tracksuit that gave it away there, wasn't it? And the fact that he couldn't do it very well. It was like watching it was like the Generation Game, wasn't it, quite frankly? But there we are, John McGinn getting underway. I could watch that, quite frankly.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I will play it every time I come back on.
Brilliant stuff. Paul Coit, good to see you this morning. You're back with us in the next hour, aren't you?
A German tennis player with a white...
Yeah, white racket.
When you were a girl, so we're looking, what, 50s, 60s then? So, OK, I think...
Hold on, mate.
You leave that with me. I'll see what I can do for you.
Very good, darling, very good. Right, goodbye, Paul.
Goodbye.
Do stay with us. Still to come, we're going to be looking at the front pages and the biggest stories of the day with Dawn Neeson and Paula London.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear, the A167 is closed eastbound along Stamfordham Road towards the A191 in Newcastle after an accident. In Staffordshire, the A50 is partly blocked eastbound towards the Dresden turn-off at Stoke-on-Trent after an accident where a lorry got driven into a wall. In Leicestershire on the A50, there's a lane closed eastbound after an accident. between Castle Donington and Kegworth. In London, the A233 is closed each way along Main Road in Biggin Hill after an accident around midnight last night. Buses are having to divert as a result. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues towards the M25 again this morning because of roadworks, and buses replaced trains on the Isle of Wight between Ryde Pierhead and Shanklin because of a faulty train. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
As he kissed her goodbye with...
Ian Phoenix was in charge of a counter-terrorism group dedicated to bringing peace to Northern Ireland. He was a husband and a father.
He was a real Irishman. He had the twinkly Irish eyes. He enjoyed a good joke. He liked a good glass of wine.
Susan Phoenix first heard of the accident that killed her husband on her car radio.
I was just driving along going, no, no, no. I can still see it. I can still feel it, even 30 years on.
On the 2nd of June 1994, the Chinook helicopter that was taking them to a peace conference crashed into the side of a mountain on the Mull of Kintyre, killing 4 crew and 25 of the country's top counter-terrorism experts. At a board of inquiry, the Ministry of Defence concluded there was no doubt whatsoever the accident had been caused by the gross negligence of the 2 pilots, Flight Lieutenants Richard Cook and Jonathan Tapper. But there was doubt. Plenty of it. There were no eyewitnesses on that foggy night, no flight data recorder, no voice recorder. It took until 2011 for the Ministry of Defence to admit they had not a shred of evidence. At the time of the crash, systematic errors in the software that controlled the engines had been reported. The MOD had seen its safety budget slashed in the run-up to the accident. In a statement, the Ministry of Defence told GB News, in 2010, the Mull of Kintyre independent review was carried out and the findings were fully accepted. The review did not find new evidence to suggest mechanical failure, and no safety issues with the Chinook Mark II were raised in the report. This weekend, the families have formed the Chinook Justice Campaign. But justice may never come.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. The time is 6:42 and let's look at some newspaper front pages for you now.
We'll start with the Daily Mail, shall we? That leads with the wife of Dr. Michael Mosley paying tribute to her brilliant husband after his body was found yesterday.
The Times leads with Suella Braverman urging the Conservatives to embrace Nigel Farage.
On to the Telegraph, which leads with French President Emmanuel Macron calling a snap election.
The Eye leads with a poll revealing Labour is yet to convince voters on key policy areas.
And the Financial Times leads with the Labour Party abandoning plans to bring back the pensions lifetime allowance.
Well, joining us now to go through what is making the news this morning is former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and broadcaster Paula London. Very good morning to you both, ladies.
Morning.
And Dawn, let's start with you, shall we? On the front page of the Times, and it's Suella Braverman saying the Tories must embrace Farage.
Yes, one of our very many former Home Secretaries, Suella Braverman, is urging the Tories to embrace Nigel Farage and unite the right, her words, not mine, because, as Suella says, there's not much difference between Farage's policies and the Tories. Well, if you think that, there's not much difference between the Tories and Labour either. But it's interesting. I mean, you know, several of the big beasts in the Tory party have already come out. Kemi Badenoch says she will not actually bring Farage back into the party, whilst Priti Patel and Jacob Rees-Mogg would. And Jacob has actually predicted Farage could become Tory leader at one point.
I don't think he would want to.
I don't. Well, I mean, the thing.
Stigmatised.
You know what?
Really,
no, you know what? Nothing would surprise me anymore. Absolutely nothing thing was surprised me. But what was curious in that debate on Friday night, where you had the 7 of them on the platform, whilst Penny Mordaunt was doing a lot of that...
Oh, that was quite aggressive, I think.
Yeah, with Angela Rayner, she actually didn't attack Nigel Farage in any way, shape or form. In fact, I think she barely mentioned him. So it's interesting, and, you know, when we've seen what happened in Europe overnight with the rise of the right-wing parties, in inverted commas, you know, without politics, anything is possible. I mean, you know, this is Suella Braverman, and this is what Suella Braverman says and does. But, you know, would Farage do it? I don't know. I mean, 39% of Reform voters would vote Conservative if Farage wasn't standing, which is interesting as well. So
it is interesting. Paula, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I don't think Rishi would be very happy with her saying that everyone should unite the right, because obviously Reform and Conservative are rivals. And she's got a 26,000 majority, so I think she'll be winning her seat, no problems. But everything's very strange at the moment, and I think... Like, I'm not sure who I'm going to vote for, but it depends on your constituency and who your MP is. A lot of people have no idea who their Reform MPs are, and you don't just vote for the leader. Some people may just vote for Nigel, but I don't think so. For me, it's important who my MP is in my constituency, whether I've had any dealings with them, what their character's like.
I think that's quite unusual. Because I think that's very unusual, because most people just see the name on the tin and think, I want them to win, and they vote for them, because a lot of people think they're much of a muchness.
I think it doesn't make sense, because if you've got a problem in your area, Nigel's not going to help you. It will be your local MP that helps you.
Well, this is the Lib Dem play card, isn't it? That's what the Lib Dems are doing. They are targeting local areas, local events for local people. That's what their ploy is. But if you think back to 2019... people voted for the Conservatives because they voted for Boris Johnson.
That's right.
They didn't actually vote for their local Conservatives.
No,
most of them couldn't name them, but it was Boris that did that.
Oh, the Lib Dems, now you mention it, do have some very interesting and localised policies, but things that people care about, like they're talking about water. Nobody's talking about water.
No.
And I think that's... water is life. I mean, that's essential.
I mean, I will never forget the post office scandal, so Ed can do whatever he likes.
But it wasn't just him, though. There were many, many post office ministers, so he was just one of a few, although he did turn away Alan Bates, which...
I just don't like the way he's acting. I don't want to be mean or anything, and it's very... Obviously, he's a great father to his son, but I just feel like he's almost using his son in a way, and it doesn't sit well with me.
Do you think... I don't know about that, because my
Not
son...
using, but I just find...
You think he's putting him in the forefront to sort of gain some sort of favour?
Think, oh, please, it just makes me feel very uncomfortable.
I think he was trying to emphasise the role that carers play, and obviously how they are unpaid, and there are many carers in this country who
But why is he doing it now when the election's coming up? He's never brought his son to the forefront before.
And there was that time when the post office scandal and people wanted him to ask questions, and then he said he was looking after his son, but then he may well have been, you know, but he'd sort of...
Yeah, that's
did
a good
seem
point.
a bit...
Yeah, that's another time he mentioned.
Paula, let's move on to Michael Mosley. Very tragic story.
Yeah, it's really sad. Obviously, we'll have to wait till the autopsy, but, I mean, he's gone now, which I guess has given some closure to his family. But the police do think he fell over and hit his head.
Oh.
So, I mean, obviously, any death is tragic. He wasn't particularly old, but he had helped a lot of people in his life. You know, he has a legacy. He'd done a lot of good, but, I mean, it's not a very nice way to go, is it, if he was on his own and in pain? And he was very close to meeting people. I think he was 100 metres or 200 metres.
Yeah, apparently within earshot of a local restaurant. I think that really brings it home, doesn't it, when you look at the pictures on the front pages today, just how close he was, Dawn, to actually...
It's incredibly sad. It's incredible. Yeah, you look at how close he was to the marina, and it's just incredibly sad. It's on the front page of every single newspaper today. I love the way the Sun have handled it, and the Daily Mail in particular. And obviously, Michael's wife gave this very emotive statement last night, because she's out there with her 4 grown-up children. And you know, evidently the children were within yards of where their dad's body was, and you just think it's just horrific. And he was so helpful to so many people with his health advice, particularly people with type 2 diabetes, like my own husband. So I mean, it's just incredibly sad. But I mean, you know, I can understand why he did what he did. I've done stupid things when I'm on holiday. I mean, I love hiking. I used to go climbing. But I've done these things. I've just taken off and go, yes, I'm just going to go and walk over that hillside. And the husband's going, no, I really wouldn't do that. But I've just done that. I mean, you know, if you're like Michael and you're like me, you do these things. So I completely understand why he was doing what he was doing, and I don't think anyone should blame him for that. The fact he didn't have a phone with him...
I'm more upset that he didn't have a phone with him.
Yeah,
but I'm not sure that would have helped if he did fall and bash his head.
Well, yeah,
but it may have helped with location.
Yeah, the tracking device.
shocking. So I think, you know, the takeaway from this is if you are going to do something like that, and I know a lot of people are spur of the moment people, just to have a mobile phone or something.
The thing I think with Michael and his story, what it illustrates is that, you know, life really is very short. We don't know how long we've got. And you need to live your life every day and love what you do every day as much as you can, because this illustrates that we don't know. You go on a happy family holiday, you know, you're having a nice walk after lunch, and then this happens and you never go back to your loved ones. And that's where the message should be, to make the most of every day you have.
And his wife has been very sort of brave about it, saying that at least he was in a beautiful place, somewhere that he loved.
We've been together 40 years.
I know, that's your soulmate, isn't it?
It's a lovely tribute, very, very heartfelt.
Lovely tribute. Dawn, let's stay with you, shall we? And should we look at the continent? This is Macron, a bit of a shock. He's called a snap election.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's intriguing, isn't it? I mean, this was our, it's called snap parliamentary elections after Europe's hard-right political parties, led by Marine Le Pen, were backed by millions of voters overnight in elections. And it's a humiliating defeat for Macron and for Olaf Scholz in Germany as well. And in Italy, Meloni has strengthened her position as well. So it really is the rise in Europe of the far right, and I'm putting that in inverted commas because I'm not actually, you know, all the papers are calling it the far right, but you know, even if you're worried about immigration these days, you're called far right. So I'm not entirely sure what far right actually means, but they're saying that, you know, you know, they are making gains in the EU. On one hand, it strengthens the EU because they're all singing from pretty much the same hymn sheet because they've all got the same people in power. But the weird thing in France is even if Macron loses the snap election, which I think he probably will, then he will still remain as president, and Le Pen will probably then become prime minister. So what is going on here? Does that mean that he's trying to set Marine Le Pen up to prove that she doesn't really have any more policies?
That could be it. That could be it. And also, I think he wants to try and change the rules so that there can be a third term.
A third term, because that's what he wants, isn't he? I mean, the double bluffs going on in European politics make ours look sort of like vaguely sane, only vaguely sane.
Paul in London, what are your thoughts on Macron?
Hi, I would love it if Macron went. I mean, he's trying to hold on because he only narrowly won the last two elections. So, and I also think regarding the far right, the mainstream media are really underestimating how upset people are with illegal immigration. It's not just about people coming over in boats. There's huge problems for the whole of Europe. And I think it's interesting how, obviously, the tide now is going to the right. Well, they're calling it far right, but it's just the right in Europe. But we're going to the left, which is quite worrying, but it may encourage Labour to be more right if they do get into power.
Do you not think that they have slightly sort of gone a bit more right anyway, looking at some of their policies? Although some of them are just, you know, some people might argue don't make any sense, but all the parties have that. But some people might argue that they seem to be moving towards the centre. Keir Starmer has kind of eradicated some of the more leftist, far left issues within his party.
Well, immigration is the big one for me, and people are forgetting how patriotic people are. It's not just Brits, it's the French, the Spanish, the Italians. And for me, immigration, this election should be won on immigration in this country, and he honestly doesn't care about the illegal immigration. That's how I feel. So it's not really moving on that.
Let's come back home and let's talk about Rishi Sunak, Paula, and he's pledging 8,000 more bobbies on the beat.
I mean, that's the least of his problems at the moment because he's you know, he thinks, oh, that's going to be great, I'm going to win now, that's going to be in his manifesto.
I don't think he thinks he's going to win.
Well, not win, but I mean, I guess he thinks, oh, now people are going to think I'm great. He's going on about how people are so worried about their cars being stolen. Like, we have got a lot bigger problems in this country than cars being stolen. It's obviously very bad for the insurance companies. But Labour, in their manifesto, they're also going to have more police. They say 12,000. So Richie is saying my 8 is going to be better because they're going to be warranted. Labour are going to put a lot of the constables that can't really do anything. Yeah, I'm still angry with Richie, but the fact I've been a very strong Conservative supporter all my life, the fact that he called the election for July, knowing it wasn't advantageous, knowing...
Well, maybe, but again, perhaps he called it because he was concerned about Nigel Farage and the Reform Party gaining steam over the next 6 months. If he waits till November, then they'll be fully formed, whereas now everybody's kind of scrabbling for candidates and so on.
I think he's lost thousands and thousands of voters by calling it for July. He's disappointed so many people because we were all waiting for the flights to go off to Rwanda, and the fact that that could have helped us have a Conservative Party in November, September, when the election I thought would be. The fact that he's just thrown that away and he's risked our lives, really. I don't want 5 years of Labour. So, yeah, I'm just not happy about anything.
Well, and just to sort of recap, that the 8,000 more bobbies was actually for car thefts, burglaries, antisocial behaviour and all that kind of stuff as well. So he is not just focused on cars.
Well, actually, talking about law and order, we had a lot of promises over the weekend, didn't we? We had Yvette Cooper also going about law and order. But we actually, it's one of the Tory party's manifestos that was fulfilled. We do actually have record numbers of police on the streets at the moment.
OK.
Thank you very much.
And Paula, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you both this morning. You'll be with us throughout the morning. Let's have a look at the weather now, shall we, with Ellie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe one or two across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still one or two showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south and still in those low double figures further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne & Wear, the A167 is closed eastbound along Stamfordham Road towards the A191 in Newcastle upon Tyne after an accident. In Staffordshire, the A50 is partly blocked eastbound towards the Dresden turnoff at Stoke-on-Trent. It's after an accident where a lorry got driven into a wall. In Leicestershire, on the A50, there's a lane closed eastbound after an accident between Junction 1, the Solly Junction, and Junction 24 of the M1 at Long Eaton, causing delays. In London, the A233 is closed each way along Main Road in Biggin Hill after an accident overnight. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues onto the M25 again this morning because of roadworks. Buses replace trains on the Isle of Wight between Ryde, Pierhead and Shanklin because of a faulty train. I'm Russell Holding.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
We'll be there.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 7 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of June.
This is Breakfast with Ellie Costello and Nana Akwe. Right, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister continues to avoid media scrutiny over the weekend as the Conservatives today pledge to recruit 8,000 new police officers.
Labour pledges to help working parents by creating 3,000 new school-based nurseries.
And the Liberal Democrats are set to be the first party to launch their manifesto today, with the Tories and Labour to follow on later in the week.
Tributes are continuing to flow in for TB doctor Michael Mosley after his body was found after a 5-day search in Greece.
A night of election bombshells in Europe as Emmanuel Macron calls for a snap French election as right-wing parties surge.
With a fifth of young people unlikely to vote on July the 4th, we'll be debating whether young people are lazy or just uninspired.
And the sport this morning, Harry Kane called the loss to Iceland on Friday a nice wake-up call ahead of the Euros, which begins on Friday. Dina Asher-Smith is back, ready for the Olympic Games after winning the European 100-metre gold last night. And the question, where is the Olympic flame today? I hear you ask.
Hello, it's a cloudy and damp start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine on the way this afternoon. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Young people, bless their hearts. Now, I shouldn't really disclose this, but my daughter, she'll be coming back to the house with her dad probably around about this time. And the thing is, we do have a little mouse in our house because I thought, where is this mouse? I heard a rustling in her bedroom. If you've ever seen teenagers, they're just filthy. She's filthy. I'm like, clean your room, clean your room. And I thought, where's there somebody in my house? I went into her bedroom, and in this bin that's full of nonsense and rubbish, I thought, oh my God, it's a mouse. So what I did was, you know, they love peanut butter on a trap. And I have some traps downstairs. I put a peanut butter on a trap there. I feel bad. I didn't mean to kill it, but unfortunately, you know. Anyway, so I woke up the next day, and there it was in the trap, like, I felt bad, and I don't condone that, but I can't have it in my house, as you must understand. Anyway, I thought, do you know what? I'm going to leave it there. She's going to come back to her room. She's going to see it. She's going to go.
You left the dead mouse
on the trap because I thought, not being horrible, just to teach her a lesson. You need to learn, girl. You need to learn. I can't wait. I wish I'd put a camera in there.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's going to give her a fright, isn't it? So that's what you've been up to this weekend?
That's what I've been doing. But I was just, when I saw the young people thing, I thought, lazy, messy, dirty, at that age, yes.
Yeah. And is she old enough to vote?
Not yet. She's 15, so she'll almost be 16. Coming up to 16, though.
Would she vote?
Well, I don't think I'd want her to, frankly. But, yeah, but the Labour Party would. And that's what one of their things was, wasn't it? Young people voting. Anyway.
Yes. Well, let us know if you have children at home, grandchildren at home. Will they be voting? What do you make of it? gbnews.com/your say. But, of course, it is election time, isn't it? It's election fever. It's sweeping the UK, but it's also sweeping the continent.
Over the weekend, the Prime Minister continued to dodge the media in the aftermath of his D-Day debacle.
But nonetheless, today the Conservatives have promised a new £650 billion policing plan, which would put 8,000 new officers on the street.
Whilst Labour today are promising to save parents £400 a year as they commit to delivering free breakfast clubs in primary schools.
And a big day for the Liberal Democrats, as Ed Davey is set to launch his party's manifesto later on this morning, the first of the major parties to do so. Well, joining us now from Labour's Battle Bus is GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Good to see you this morning, Catherine. And we are expecting big childcare plans, expansion of them from Labour today. Can you tell us a bit more?
Yes, good morning from the Labour bus, somewhere en route to the East Midlands, in the middle of the motorway, travelling quite fast at the moment. Labour today unveiling plans for 100,000 new childcare places, paid for by putting VAT on private school fees. They say that they're planning to convert up to potentially 3,500 classrooms at a cost of about £40,000 each, because basically people are having less children. The birth rate is falling increasingly. Schools have got spare capacity, so this is the plan. And Keir Starmer saying childcare is critical infrastructure. Both parties seem to have finally woken up to the fact that childcare is horrendously expensive in this country and there's a real crisis with it. Worth saying, though, that this is really dwarfed by the decision of the current government and the fact that Labour are going to adopt it. There's this massive expansion of free childcare down to children from 9 months. Ultimately, that's a really, really big deal. The Conservatives feel they haven't got any credit for that whatsoever. Talking of the Conservatives, yes, they're pledging 8,000 more police officers. They're saying that they've recruited 20,000 more since 2019. Of course, that only replaces the 20,000 that were cut during austerity. Will we hear from Rishi Sunak today? Journalists didn't hear from him over the weekend. We saw some photographs of him out and about campaigning, but he's gone very, very quiet, hasn't he, since that disaster, to put it frankly, of him leaving the D-Day commemorations early. Elsewhere, the Tory party chairman sent out yesterday got into a bit of bother on a broadcast interview. He was asked repeatedly about the fact that he's been put into a supposedly safe seat, Billericay and Basildon, as the only candidate. Lots of locals very unhappy about that. He dodged the question repeatedly, just trying to talk about Labour, and in the end the journalist doing the interview said, "This is ridiculous, I'm stopping this interview now." So not a great day for the Tory party chairman yesterday.
OK, Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you this morning.
Right, well, joining us now to take a more international perspective is the Deputy Editor of The Spectator, Freddie Gray. Freddie, welcome. Really good to talk to you.
Good morning. Hello.
Right, so where should we start? Do you want to start with the French elections?
Well, let's start with the French side of the European elections, because it was a staggering result. I mean, for National Rally to pull off that coup, and then for it to be followed by the immediate drama of Macron responding so quickly by calling an election. But there's a reason why he's done that. It's because his party will have been horrified by the results and desperate to do something. If you look, there's this map that's going around social media. I don't know if we can pull it up. There's a map of how convincingly National Rally won. And if you look at it, is it coming up?
Yeah, we'll get that up for you in just a minute. Yeah.
It shows just they won in almost every constituency outside of the city. There we go.
What does it mean? It looks like
so that brown is National Rally. Brown is Marine Le Pen's party. So you can
And
just
it's everywhere.
So the white is the gap in the
that's
middle
Paris, yeah, and then you can see a little bit in Bordeaux and so on in other places. But even in those places, National Rally did much better.
there. So what does the brown mean? Sorry, what's
the brown means Le Pen.
Marine Le
Pen's
Pen.
party.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So just in the middle there, that little white dot there.
Which is Paris.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you see tiny bits of pink in other places elsewhere, but it's pretty much a
That is stark,
nationwide
isn't it?
sweep. And I think that shows you not just how unpopular Macron is, but it also shows you how Le Pen has changed her party. You know, and we talked earlier about the word far right. You know, she's not far right in the sense her father was. Her father was an anti-Semite.
I remember, yeah.
Her father was pretty much genuinely a sort of Vichy-style fascist. She is not that. You can disagree with her, you can dislike her on many things, but she's not that. And she has introduced a younger element to her party now, which is spearheaded by this guy called Jordan Bardella, who is increasingly becoming the leader of the party, even ahead of her in some people's minds. And he's more popular among metropolitan people, among young people. He's very good on TV. And really what you're seeing is the National Right are becoming the political party of France. And now you'll have parliamentary elections in which this is probably, unless something very dramatic happens, probably going to be confirmed. I think what Macron's hoping on one level is that he will have a less embarrassing result. He's going to lose probably, but he'll have a less embarrassing result because he'll be able to rally up that fear of fascism, that fear of the far right that has got him elected twice. Because remember, the reason he got elected last time was because people didn't want to vote for Marine Le Pen. It wasn't because they particularly like him.
It's a gamble, though, isn't it, Freddie?
It's a huge gamble because it could end up... I mean, I think what he's thinking about doing is doing what Mitterrand, what happened in the age of Mitterrand, which is you bring in your enemy into government and then you make it clear to the public that they are just as bad as you are in government. And I think that's what Macron wants to do. I just don't know if it will work because I think...
I can't see that. It seems like a very odd tactic. I can't see it working. I think he probably just panicked.
Well, I think you do have, as president, rather than... You know, people are making the comparisons between Sunak and Macron. They are quite interesting. Both of them sort of responded to local election results or European election results, in Macron's case, by calling an election. But Rishi's going to lose his job in these elections if he loses the election.
I don't think he could be that concerned,
Macron will not.
Yeah, Macron stays on, but Rishi is a billionaire, isn't he? So
well, he can, quite. Yeah,
he'd be all right. He'd be all right if he doesn't.
It is fascinating, though, isn't it? This swing to the right across the world.
It is fascinating. Look at what's going on in Germany. I mean, the AfD, which has had terrible problems, they are, by I think the sort of, if you want to have right-wing, left-wing-ometer, they're probably further to the right than Marine Le Pen now. They did much better than expectations. They beat Olaf Scholz's party in Germany. And look at what's going on the left in Germany. You know, the Greens, which are a very powerful party in Germany, did very, very badly last night. They went down to about 12%, which was a big drop for them. And the one left-wing party that did well in Germany are the BSW. They're called the anti-migrant left-wing party.
Oh, right.
And so what you see is immigration is the issue that really defines all this politics. And actually, European publics, just like the British public, they're not right-wing in any sort of old-fashioned, nasty right sense, other than on the issue of immigration, because they are all publics and all peoples, and you see it in America, and it's why you're going to have possibly a right-wing move in America again with Donald Trump in November. Immigration is the issue that constantly drives voters out to the polls to express their disgust at what their governments are doing.
But because a lot of people call it right-wing, but I've been called far-right. I mean, I don't think the far-right would have let me in. And just for my notion that there are two genders, you know what I mean? So this notion that people are far-right simply for expressing views that are clearly common sense, in my view...
The terms have been cheapened beyond all meaning.
You know,
I try not to use it because it doesn't actually have a meaning anymore. I don't think. And particularly when these parties, you know, far-right means you're not outside the mainstream. When these parties are becoming the mainstream, which they are, Reform is, Marine Le Pen is, you know, you can't really call them far-right anymore.
Freddie, just before we let you go, we're talking about immigration, there being a key issue around the world. What do you think the election here is going to be won on? Do you think it's about immigration, the economy?
I think if Reform outperform the Conservatives, which looks like it might happen, that will be because of immigration. Right. Reform are making this the immigration election. They're banging that message very, very hard, and it works because the Tories have failed to address illegal immigration properly. That's one small part of it, but more people are now increasingly concerned about legal migration and the huge levels of legal migration. So, yes, I think this will be a very important factor. And Labour are a bit more trusted on immigration than they were under Corbyn, which is one of the reasons why they're being quite successful.
Well, there's no excuse for the high levels of legal migration. There really isn't. They could have controlled it properly and they didn't.
And there's a big sense in the country that it's not under control, and that it maybe has helped bring down wages and control inflation to a certain extent. And was that the plan all along? I think a lot of people think it might have been. But it's their communities that are having to deal with huge numbers of people and not necessarily integrating them that well.
Well, also Nigel Farage, a sort of very neutral think tank, has come out and said that actually we are not getting the right kind of immigration in this country and it's costing us more money rather than bringing into the Treasury.
Well, and Nigel Farage is, whatever one thinks, been very good at articulating that point of view, and that's why they're doing so well. And if they pip the Tories in this election, if they beat the Tories at this election, you'll see exactly what you saw in Europe last night, which is the harder right, the more resolute right, winning at the expense of the more centrist right.
OK, Freddie Gray, good to see you this morning.
Great to be with you.
Indeed. And do let us know what you make of any of those stories that we're touching upon with Freddie or with Catherine, gbnews.com/yoursay.
Now, tributes are flowing today for TV doctor Michael Mosley, whose body was found yesterday on the Greek island of Symi after going missing on Wednesday.
Yes, his wife, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley, paid tribute to her wonderful husband, who she said they had been incredibly lucky to have a long and wonderful life together. While colleagues and friends have described him as immediately likeable and a genuinely funny man.
Well, joining us now is Greek journalist Ilana Margara. I hope I said that right. Ilana, this seems like, you know, a lot of people say they may have made a similar mistake to Michael by just going away. It looks very idyllic. It looks that, you know, a couple of rocks here and there. Seems like you're on a holiday. What would you say to tourists who will, when they do come to the Greek Isles?
I think it's a very, actually desperately sad cautionary tale for tourists and locals alike. The fact that you can start walking on an island that you don't know, and then you might take a wrong turn and get lost, or just get on a very difficult path to navigate. I think that it should be on everyone's minds after what has happened, what has very sadly happened to Michael Mosley. It seems that he managed to navigate actually the very difficult rocky path that he ended up taking. But because of the heat and probably exhaustion, we don't yet know the exact cause of death, because the body will be taken to the hospital at Rhodes, which is a bigger island close to Symi, for an autopsy today. But that's why he probably didn't make it, even though he managed to eventually get very close to the seaside.
We've just been seeing footage on our screens here of just how close Dr. Michael Mosley was to safety. He got very, very close to that bar, didn't he? Very close to that marina. And I'm not sure if that makes this story worse or whether that could be potentially comforting to his family that he was so close to getting help.
I've been thinking about the exact same thing. If it's worse or in some way more comforting for the family to know that he ended up being so close. It seems that his hand was found on his stomach or close to his chest. So maybe he managed to get there and he didn't fall. In order to get to that specific spot, because there were some theories that maybe because he was found on this rocky terrain, that maybe he fell and ended up that close to the beach. But from the stance of his body, what is being said now is that he probably managed to reach that point, but we'll know more later.
Yeah, it's very sad, isn't it?
And what can you tell us about the terrain? Because there are questions this morning on many of our front pages on our newspapers saying, why did it take 5 days to find Dr. Michael Mosley if he was this close to safety, that close to where people were sat and holidaying? What is it about the terrain that made this search so difficult?
This is still unclear, and we're still waiting from the authorities to weigh in on that, because it has been known for days that search teams, huge search teams, and aided by helicopters and dogs and drones, were searching the entire island. On the first 2 days, it seems like they were focused on a different area because they thought that he had taken the regular path to get to where he was going. But still, even then, they had been searching everywhere. And what was said yesterday as well, after the body was found, was that that specific area had been searched numerous times by all kinds of search teams, and even by his children, as far as I'm aware. That it was said yesterday that they had reached about 100 meters from that point during their search. It's rocky, it's on a hillside, it's a very dry area, so it seems that that's why, and it was behind a fence as well, so it seems that's why he was not, his body was not found earlier.
Yeah, very, very sad news. Ileana, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for your thoughts.
So desperately sad, isn't it? And just how close he got. I'm not sure if it does make that better for the family or whether it makes it worse.
I think his wife said that she feels comforted by the fact that he was so close and that he almost made it. So, you know, I think that's, you know, that's the takeaway from him.
I think the only thing you can think as the family is at least perhaps he had some hope in his heart towards the end. You know, if you could see the sea, if you could see people, maybe he felt hopeful. It's just so sad, isn't it? And so many of you getting in touch this morning with your own tributes about Dr. Michael Mosley. Do keep them coming in, gbnews.com/yoursay.
Right, let's have a look at some of the other stories coming into the newsroom. A woman in her 40s remains in hospital with life-threatening injuries after a ride malfunctioned at a fun fair in South London on Saturday. The Lambeth Country Show in Brockwell Park has reopened, but some rides remain cordoned off. An investigation is underway, led by the Metropolitan Police.
Israeli War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz has resigned from Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Last month, Mr. Gantz set a deadline of the 8th of June for Mr. Netanyahu to lay out how Israel would achieve its 6 strategic goals, including the end of Hamas rule in Gaza. Mr. Netanyahu responded to the resignation on Twitter, saying, "This is not the time to quit the campaign. This is the time to join forces."
Former Scotland and Liverpool defender Alan Hansen is seriously ill in hospital. The club is providing support to the family of the 68-year-old who retired in 1991 to start a successful career as a television pundit. In a statement, the Liverpool Football Club said that its thoughts are with their legendary former captain, and they've requested the family's privacy be respected.
And political parties are being urged to prioritise potholes in their manifesto commitments. A campaign group named the Pothole Partnership has called for a limit on temporary road repairs and for funding to tackle potholes to be accelerated and increased. The group warns damage to vehicles caused by poor roads is at a 5-year high, which is costing the economy £14.4 billion each year.
I can tell you that I did actually just receive a phone call from my daughter. Did you? Just as I was talking earlier.
After your mouse story.
I hope she wasn't listening. I don't think she was listening. So it's the, Mummy, there's a mouse.
She's seen the mouse.
I hope she doesn't try and use my slipper or something. She'll use something of mine to remove it rather than something of hers.
Do you think
she should just leave it alone?
It?
I don't think she will. She'll be walking around it. She should leave it. Bless its heart. Sorry. If you missed it, it's a little mouse.
A mouse in Nana's house. Which you've now left in your daughter's bedroom.
It is. Well, it went in there specifically for food, which it would have found after the last time she went out. She left a little box of these chicken bones because she's been to the chicken shops and everything. I'm like, what? Please, this is teenagers for you. Honestly, seriously. Right, sorry about that.
Now, 22 minutes past 7, let's take a look at the weather with Ellie.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe one or two across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still one or two showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south and still in those low double figures further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Well, if you just tuned in, it's just coming up to 25 minutes after 7 o'clock. This is GB News, and it's time for the Great British Giveaway now, and your chance to make this summer really, really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's 15 grand in cash and a load of treats, but you have to be in it to win it, and here are all the details that you need.
We're making this summer funner with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Lots of you getting in touch on Young People's Day. John Andrews says young people are really up against it these days. He says, but all of my children and their partners are going to be voting for reform, just like they voted for Brexit, but we are still waiting for proper Brexit. And Alison's been in touch saying, my 19-year-old is making sure that all of her uni friends vote. They're not all apathetic.
But they're uni people, and that's when you're that age. But I'm sort of looking at because the Labour Party were talking about bringing the vote down to 16 and 17-year-olds as well. Do you think that's a good idea? Do you think they should, 16 and 17-year-olds, do you think they should be allowed to vote?
No, it's a really good question. Do let us know what you think, gbnews.com/yoursay. But we are talking about this because we're about to debate it after this break. Young people, are they lazy or are they just too uninspired to vote? We'll be talking about that next.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. The time is exactly 7:30. Now, a survey has found almost a fifth of young people who are eligible to vote have said they are unlikely to head to the polls on July the 4th, suggesting that there could be some disillusionment with politicians.
Well, today we're asking, are young people too lazy to vote?
Well, joining us to debate this is political commentator Anna McGovern, who thinks young people are uninspired, and former Apprentice star Ryan Mark Parsons, who thinks young people are just lazy. Very good morning to the two of you. Good to see you. Anna, let's start with you. So you don't think this is about laziness, you just think that they're not inspired by any of the parties.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think young people, especially with the current regime, have been let down time and time again. I remember back in 2020, when lockdown, for example, was first initiated, I was an A-level student. And I remember going through that process where, for example, we couldn't sit our exams because of the lockdown restrictions. And then that disastrous policy where the government essentially chose our grades. And then that essentially meant that when we were applying for top university courses, the grades that we would have normally got when we sat exams, for the most part, for many young people, ended up being a lot lower. And then even when these were corrected, the universities had filled up all their places by then, and then students had missed out. I also believe that with the current government, they're not prioritising young people, and they're completely uninspired. I look at the current parties that are up for election, and personally, I currently plan to spoil my ballot. I am not seeing young people represented in any of this. And I think this really does need to be a top priority, because at the moment, I don't blame young people for not wanting to vote or getting involved, because how are the political parties we have on offer really representing them, rather than just letting them down?
But Anna, I mean, the young people should learn that's life. You've got the best of a bad bunch and you've got to pick the best one, surely. Ryan, what do you think?
Well, look, I'm 24. I have these conversations with all of my friends who are also the same age. And I think, yes, there is a degree of apathy. And I think there is also in part a degree of selfishness. Look, there's no denying that elections are fought disproportionately on gaining the older vote, and the policies that come out are skewed towards an older voter. Let's look at the Conservative policy of the triple lock plus. 18-year-olds aren't necessarily going to care about pensions, but that's why we're seeing a reduction in young people going to the polling stations. Look at the last elections. 2019, you had 47% of 18 to 24-year-olds going to vote. The same in 2017, it's slightly higher, 54%. 2015 was 43%, 2010 was 44%. We are seeing a 20% decrease against the national average of people turning out to vote. And I think that is because young people also don't understand the practicalities of everyday life. And what it's like for an actual adult in the world when it comes to taxes, when it comes to healthcare. There are reasons why young people aren't voting, but I think a large part of it is apathy and also selfishness, because they only care about issues that concern themselves rather the wider society. And I think that plays a part of it.
Do you think that's right, Anna? Because, you know, young people are too busy on TikTok. Currently, my daughter's probably crying over a mouse in her bedroom. You know, when she gets to 18, I don't think she'll be that bothered about voting. Do you think that's what it is? They're just lazy because they can't be bothered. They're too busy on likes on, not Facebook, what do they do now? Instagram. Yeah. Anna.
I mean, to an extent, I do agree with Ryan. And I think for many people as well, you're going to vote for the party that best represents your situation and will help you. I don't think there's anything selfish about that. You're going to vote for something that's going to benefit you, it's going to benefit your family. I think for many young people, yes, there is a huge problem with TikTok and social media addiction. And I think for many young people as well, what really disappoints me is the way that the Conservatives and Labour are trying to win over the young people vote is through memes. That's how they're trying to convince young people to get down and vote. And I think that actually then shows a huge problem then with our political education. Yes, young people are apathetic. Yes, many young people don't actually understand what is happening in the world of politics. And I think that is a failing of our education system, that they're not taught about this. Some young people as well are not actually taught how to register to vote. So I think parties need to be prioritising young people throughout this process, and political education needs to be prioritised and brought into schools so young people are able to fully engage and have an understanding of the world around them.
But why should it be somebody else's responsibility to get somebody who's 18 to learn about the political system? I mean, that's what it's about. When you turn into an adult, you start to focus on the things that are relevant to you, and it's down to you. That this is the transition from being at school where you're spoon-fed and then you become an adult and then you feed yourself. Why should it be the school's responsibility, Ryan? Do you think? Sorry, I just want to ask that.
No, I totally agree with you, Nana. I think young people need to engage themselves. It shouldn't be on the responsibility of schools to get young people politically motivated. I mean, from the age of 16, I joined the Conservative Party, and I've been a proactive member of the party ever since. In fact, I'm out here in mid-Buckinghamshire campaigning for Greg Smith, who's a candidate here. And I've been out every single day canvassing. And I think there needs to be more motivation amongst young people to get out and to become politically aware and to do more for wider society. Yes, political parties aren't always going to appeal to what young people care about, but actually it's about thinking about others than just yourself. You know, care about the pensioners, care about healthcare, even though you might not be going to the hospital as much as an older person. These are things that young people need to be aware of, acknowledge, and then cast their vote based on issues that don't necessarily concern them. That's what I would say to young people watching this. And Labour's motivation to reduce the voting age to 16 is really just to skew the vote in favour of Labour and to increase their voter share, because obviously young people, I would say as a supplementary point, are very influenced by, like Anna was saying, social media, their social groups. They don't seem to have a brain sometimes to think for for themselves and to actually go out and vote based on their own political principles. And I would say that's fundamentally an issue as well.
Well, listen, Ryan, Mark and also Anna McGovern, thank you very much. I mean, if they really are that lazy, then Labour's plan, if that is it to skew the vote, that won't work, will it, if they're that lazy? And also, I think it's worrying if you have people in education then teaching you about politics because they then skew it towards their own narrative. I think that would be a problem.
Well, let us know what you think on that debate. gbnews.com/you'll-say. We know that you're going to have a view on that, that's for sure. You just heard Ryan Mark talk about Greg Smith there, who is the Conservative candidate for mid-Buckinghamshire. So we are just going to share the other candidates who are vying for your votes in that seat. So the Climate Party is Wisdom Da Costa. Standing for Labour is Charisma Griffiths. Reform UK is Stephanie Harwood. Liberal Democrats, Anja Schaefer. Conservative, Greg Smith. Green, looks like another Greg Smith. And the Social Democratic Party is Yvonne Wilding. They are all standing for election in mid-Buckinghamshire.
Right, well, coming up is the sports with Paul Quaid. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie and Nana.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M80 North Lanarkshire is partly blocked eastbound between junctions 5 and 4A from Shot to the Heartlands to change its slope towards there. Tyne Wear, the A167 is closed eastbound along Stamfordham Road towards the A191 in Newcastle after an accident. In Staffordshire, the A50 is closed eastbound towards the Dresden turn-off in Stoke-on-Trent after an accident. A lorry got driven into a wall. In Leicestershire on the A40, the inside lane's closed eastbound towards junction 24 of the M1 at Long Eaton after an accident with delays towards and past there. In London, the A233 is closed along Main Road at Biggin Hill after an accident overnight. On the M26 in Kent, there are westbound queues getting onto the M25 again this morning because of roadworks. And a couple of things on the Isle of Wight. Sandown Road in Shanklin is closed because of an accident. Train services are suspended between Shanklin and Ryde Pierhead because of a faulty train. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you.
And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel. Good Good morning. It's just coming up to 43 minutes after 7 o'clock this morning, and it's time to go through all, excuse me, all the latest sports news with broadcaster Paul Coit. He's here with us.
Morning, Paul.
Morning. Nana, I've got some good news for you.
Go on, then.
I've got a list of German tennis players from the past, because you had a tennis racket, didn't you? And you're not sure who it was. You weren't happy with the name. It was one of those branded tennis rackets. These are some German tennis players from the day. Was it the Heinrich Kleinschroth tennis racket?
No.
What about the Philipp Kohlschreiber?
Oh, hang on. No.
OK. What about the Paul Lindpainter, or the Hans Moldenhauer, or the Otto von Müller, or the Dirk Leppen tennis racket?
What's the Hans one?
The Hans Moldenhauer.
It could have been Hans Moldenhauer.
It could have been the Hans Moldenhauer.
Hans Moldenhauer.
Yeah, was it a metal racket or was it a wooden racket?
No, it was wooden. Don't make me sad. I wanted a metal one at the time.
Now, talking of Germany, we've got the Euros coming up, which is begins on Friday, and this is just my favourite thing, and I'm never going to get tired of this, because Scotland have gone to Garmisch, which is a beautiful place at the foot of the Alps. It's just a lovely skiing resort, and that is where Scotland will be staying. That's their base, and they will be playing the host Germany on Friday. So to get in the spirit of Germany and Bavaria, here's John McGinn. Let's see this straight away. This is the most important sports news. John McGinn, captain of Scotland.
Yes.
Look at him. I thought maybe he should be wearing the lederhosen, but then we can recognise who he is. He's not bad, though, is he?
No, he's quite good.
He was quite good at it. I don't know whether the physios would be too happy with that sort of move there.
Yeah, the pressure on the knees.
I know, terrible pressure on the knees.
Yeah.
But, yeah, love that. I could just watch that.
Yeah, good stuff. So could I. Let's talk about Harry Kane.
Yes, well, Harry Kane has said that we really don't need to worry, really, that it was a bit of a wake-up call, because it was a very bad result when England played Iceland on Friday. Lost 1-0. Really nothing too much to worry.
Well, how much are these dudes getting paid? I think we do need to worry. You get that much, you've got to win.
It's not about the cash.
It is about the cash.
Not on this point. It's not about the cash, now. It's like, well, you go, I don't care who you're playing, you go out and win because you get paid. Well, the thing is,
they get paid a lot, don't they?
A huge amount of money.
Do they not?
They pay for England. They do OK, I think. I think they get a few quid, but it's nothing like the money that they're going to get from clubs, because it's the honour of playing for your country.
I mean, these guys get like over 100 grand a week.
Yeah, some of them do.
100 grand a week.
Some of the good ones do. Yeah. But unfortunately,
sounds good, doesn't it?
Doesn't it sound good?
Forget about the money. It's that's it. They earn good money, and we would look at that and think, yeah, it's outrageous. But I never blame the players, because if they can get it, good luck to them. I work with
nice work if you can get it.
It is.
Yeah.
I was working. Funny enough, I was working at the baseball over the weekend at the London Stadium, which was an amazing thing. We had the 2-foot hot dog that we had on the show on Friday that you could get. And I was talking to old players, and they're exactly the same. Old baseball players, they're over from the States, same as football players here from the old days, because they just say, you know what, it was a great game, but we don't get anywhere near the money these guys get these days. And that's what but that's just the way it goes. But anyway, when it comes to England, Harry Kane, there's nothing really too much to worry about. Other countries who are also expected to do well, they've not done that well in friendlies, because you don't want to go out and just try. You've got to win. It's just, these are just warm-up games, but then the big stuff happens.
It's a bit like doing your mock exam, isn't it? You don't do really good in the mocks, and then you'll just...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And but with those, you're just going to hold it back a little slightly. So nothing really too much to worry about.
Paul, we've got 20 seconds with you. So our favourite question at the moment to you is, where is the Olympic torch
Well,
today?
it's funny you should say that, because I was just thinking about that just now.
Yes, I thought you'd like to mention
It's gone across the Atlantic. It's in French Guiana. Have a look at this. Here goes the Olympic flame.
Oh, wow.
Look at that. It's in the north of South America. Can you say North South America? French Guiana, which is on the borders of Brazil.
Does it ever go out? Does it ever go out, or it...
The flame, Nana.
Never goes
the
out.
The Olympic flame is always alight. It's always alight. Because the thing is, if it did go out, they'd have to go back to Greece, relight it, fly it back again.
Start all over again.
Exactly.
No, they wouldn't.
NBA player Kevin Serafin, who is from French Guiana, swimmer, Malia.
Oh, he's doing some breakdancing.
And some, there we are, a little bit of breakdancing there, which is now an Olympic sport. I don't know what that is. Marching, I don't think is an Olympic sport. But there we are, they're celebrating the Olympic flame. So it's doing the French territories, and then we'll head back to France for the end of July. And then, of course, that's when it'll be lit at the stadium.
Fabulous stuff. Paul Coit, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Right, still to come, we'll be taking a look at the biggest stories of the day in Making the News with Dawn Neeson and Paula London. That's next. This is Breakfast on GB News with Ellie and Nana.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nana Akweer, weekends from 3 p.m.
What about the elections? Because it seems that the King and everything is moving because of it, and we've got a lot of royal engagements and things that happen at this time.
Yes, well, you know, it means that he has to take more time and be at home. He can't go to all the things he wants to do. He's been doing 5 a day, which is probably made Camilla a bit cross. But what they still hope is that they can get the Japanese Emperor and Empress over. That's in July. That they can go to France for the 80th anniversary of the fighting. And he will be able to do 1 or 2 things. And Ascot he's very keen to do. Now, those aren't things that are political in any way. I just want to talk about Harry and Charles's argument, where Harry said he didn't want to stay, he wanted to go to a hotel. And it's come out now that actually King Charles is believed that he was offered St James's, and Princess Anne stays there and Beatrice stays there.
And this was for when Harry came over for his 10th anniversary for Invictus.
And the policemen are wandering around with guns, and there's no chance of actually there being any problem there. So the fact that he said that it wasn't safe for him was not actually a very sensible thing to say, I don't think.
Well, he went to Nigeria, and that is, in the world ranking, it's ranked as quite a dangerous place.
Yes, one of the dangerous places in the world. But now Harry and Meghan have been invited to go to Ghana.
Oh, God. Well, it's interesting because my parents are from Ghana. I have Ghanaian heritage, and I'm thinking she'll probably then claim there's a percentage that she's Ghanaian as well. I'll be like, hang on a minute, you were Maltese, you're also Nigerian,
and
now you're going to say you're Ghanaian and German.
Yeah.
Come on. Thank you very much.
Squeeze it in.
Yeah, let's get them all in. Angela Levin, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Breakfast Time. It's 7:50. We're going to have a very quick look at the newspapers with former editor at the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and broadcaster Paula London. Morning, ladies.
Morning.
And Dawn, let's start with the Telegraph, shall we?
Yeah,
and the NHS is pleading for blood after a cyber attack.
Yeah, this is the awful story. I think the actual cyber attack by a Russian group called Quillin, happened actually on Friday or Saturday. But now what's happened is the NHS are pleading for blood. The cyber attack attacked hospitals, making blood donation and transplants much more difficult because it had to be done by hand rather than automated. So now the NHS are putting out an appeal for blood donors to come forward, especially if you are O positive, which is the most common and 35% of us have. It can be used for all other blood types, whether you're A or B, etc., etc. But there are 13,000 blood donation vacancies available, and they are saying that obviously so many operations are being cancelled now because of this. They are asking people, if you can go and give blood, please do so. Very simple. And remember, there's many, many big hospitals in London that are affected by this.
I was just going to say, it's O negative that's the universal donor.
Yeah.
So if you're O negative, then that is the one that can give to everybody. So in particular, it's O negative.
Yeah, and that can help for everyone. So if you can go and give blood, please do so today. Yeah. Helping people.
Yeah, if you can, please do. Paula, should we have a look at the Mail? And this is about celebrities being sent to Digity.
What is that?
Yeah, it's like a digital form of a guillotine. So, I mean, I used to work in PR, and many, many years ago, like, agents and PRs would tell celebrities, like, to stay out of politics, etc. It would be the best way. But because of the Gaza conflict in Israel, now, if people are not speaking out in support of Gaza. They're losing hundreds and hundreds of thousands of followers. So, I mean, even as recent as last week, I mean, myself, I'm not a celebrity, but like myself and people that are celebrities, they were getting vilified for being happy because the hostages were being released, because people are like, how dare you be happy when lots of other people lost their lives in Gaza during the operation. So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You can't, if you celebrate something's happening for Israel, you'll be vilified, and then unless you say something about Gaza. So it's very, very difficult. You can't be quiet, but if you do something, either side will come for you. So there's a big problem with Gaza at the moment. Especially Hollywood celebrities like Kim Kardashian's losing hundreds of thousands of followers, and agents and PRs are just calling it a digitine, so they've never seen anything as bad.
Really, I just speak my mind, so people follow me and they've heard what I've had to say, and I don't change it.
But I think when they had
really,
their brand deals, they're losing brand deals.
Well, that is the thing, you know, if you say things and the brands don't like it, then they... But I think it's time for the advertisers to step out of this. Because years ago, you used to have sponsorship and advertising, and sponsorship was an association with the brand, and advertising was just simply a way of reaching an audience. And now they've merged, and advertisers are becoming almost sponsors and getting picky.
And you were just speaking your mind about Taylor Swift, which went down very well with your colleague this morning. A quick story in the Daily Mirror today. Chris Packham, a Spring Watch presenter, he's taken on Taylor Swift, who's over here at the moment, selling out concerts, urging all Taylor Swift fans to protest at her private jet use. So he thinks all the 16-year-olds who are flocking to see Taylor should hold banners up saying, stop using private jets, Taylor. So, yeah, it's taking on the icon that is Taylor Swift. Good luck with that one, Chris.
Yeah, she's not... I don't get it with Taylor Swift. I mean, she's all right, but she's average. She's a billionaire. How has she done that?
She's not average.
She is
taking
average.
the world by storm.
I mean...
Oh, God, this is so much better. Go on, carry on, you.
I think with this, she's never claimed to be some sort of eco-warrior.
No, she hasn't. I mean, she does have...
She's never said that people shouldn't use private jets and things.
And her spokesperson said that she offsets... She does have a very expensive private jet. And she offsets it all by planting trees all over the place. Which basically...
Right, Dawn, we're out of time, I'm afraid.
Shut up,
sorry,
then, shall I?
such a short papers. Thank you very much, ladies. We'll look at the weather now with Ellie.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning, and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe one or two across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still one or two showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south, and still in those low double figures further north.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel. Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear, the A167 is closed eastbound along Stamford Road towards the A191 in Newcastle after an accident. The M62 on Merseyside is partly blocked eastbound by an accident between junction 7 and 8 from Rainhill Stoops towards Warrington, causing queues. In Staffordshire, the A50 is closed eastbound towards the Dresden turnoff at Stoke-on-Trent after a lorry got driven into a wall. There are queues towards there from the Sidaway roundabout. In Leicestershire on the A50, the inside lane's closed eastbound after an accident towards junction 24 of the M1 at Long Eaton, causing queues. In London, the A233 is closed along Main Road in Biggin Hill after an accident overnight. And there are a couple of problems on the Isle of Wight. Sandown Road in Shanklin is closed because of an accident. And train services are suspended between Shanklin and Ryde Pierhead because of a faulty train. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of June.
This is Breakfast with Ellie Costello and Nana Acquia. Right, here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister continues to avoid media scrutiny over the weekend as the Conservatives today pledged to recruit 8,000 new police officers.
Labour pledges to help working parents by creating 3,000 new school-based nurseries. We'll be speaking to Shadow Schools Minister Kat McKinnell shortly.
And the Liberal Democrats are set to be the first party to launch their manifesto today, with the Tories and Labour to follow on later in the week.
Tributes continue to flow in for TV doctor Michael Mosley after his body was found after a 5-day search in Greece.
A night of election bombshells in Europe as Emmanuel Macron calls for a snap French election as right-wing parties surge.
And in the sport this morning, Harry Kane called the loss to Iceland, and it's just a nice wake-up call. Ahead of the Euros, that's all it is. Carlos Alcaraz became only the 7th player in history to win Grand Slams on all 3 different surfaces as he won the French Open on clay yesterday. And Dina Asher-Smith is back and ready for the Olympic Games after winning the European 100-metre gold last night.
Hello, it's a cloudy and damp start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine on the way this afternoon. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views. I told you the story about a mouse in my house. Colin says, Nana, keep an eye out. A mouse in your home is very rarely alone. It won't be a mouse. You're likely to have mice.
Oh, no.
Well, they're all heading to my daughter's room, so that's all right. I'll be all right with
You might have to set some more traps.
I will do. Yeah, unfortunately. You know,
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Oh, I've got one here from Ox saying, has Sunak resigned yet? He's useless at politics. That's what some people are saying.
Well, do keep the views coming in this morning, gbnews.com/yoursay. But, of course, it is election fever, not just here in the UK, but across the continent as well.
Well, over the weekend, the Prime Minister continued to dodge the media in the aftermath after his D-Day debacle.
But nonetheless, today the Conservatives have promised a new £650 billion policing plan, which would put 8,000 new officers on the street.
That's a lot of money, £650 billion. Whilst Labour are promising to save parents £400 a year as they commit to delivering free breakfast clubs in primary schools.
And a big day for the Liberal Democrats as Ed Davey is set to launch his party's manifesto later on this morning, the first of the major parties to do so this week.
And with no Prime Minister doing the rounds, Tory chair Richard Holden was forced to face the media during a bit of a car crash interview yesterday.
How do you answer the charge? It just looks like an appalling stitch-up, and you are part of a self-serving elite.
This interview is about Emily Thornberry's comments today, and when she admitted that it's going to be our children across the country who pay the price for Labour's decision.
I come back to the question. It looks like a stitch-up. Chairman of the party, short list of one, just before nominations close. How is that not an appalling stitch-up and anti-democratic?
Emily Thornberry today has completely admitted.
So you can't justify the way you have been parachuted into Basildon and Billericay. You're not denying it's a stitch-up and it's anti-democratic.
Emily Thornberry today has admitted...
I'm going to stop you now. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You said in an interview earlier this year you were bloody loyal to the North East. What happened to that?
John, I've already answered these questions.
No, you haven't.
Painful, isn't it?
It's a difficult watch, isn't it, that one? Yeah, let us know your thoughts on that, gbnews.com/yoursay. Joining us now are GB News political correspondents Catherine Forster and Olivia Utley. Good to see you both this morning. Catherine, let's start from you. What are we expecting to hear from the Labour Party today? We're going to hear about an expansion of childcare plans, aren't we?
Yes, good morning. A couple of big announcements from the Labour Party today on childcare. One is promising free breakfast clubs for primary school aged children. They estimate that will save parents on average about £400 a year. The second one is to create 100,000 extra childcare places. And they're saying that they're potentially going to convert up to 3,500 unused or underused classrooms in schools at a cost of about £40,000 each to accommodate all these children. So Keir Starmer has said that childcare is critical infrastructure. This is something that both the main parties seem to have finally woken up to after, childcare being one of the most expensive here in the developed world. Worth saying too, of course, that Labour have made the decision to stick with the government's very expensive and very big plans for childcare, which is basically to roll out free childcare from the age of 9 months. That is a very big commitment from the government, and Labour are going to keep it, and this is one of the ways that they're going to accommodate these extra places. So big announcements from Labour Party today, hoping that it's going to bring families on board.
Sounds like a very interesting policy, a very expensive policy. I hope at that point they'll also explain how they're going to fund it, because that sounds expensive. I mean, I think it's wonderful, but expensive. Are they going to talk about their funding for this? Yeah, well, that'll be interesting. All right, let's go to Olivia Utley.
Yes.
Olivia, so what about the Conservatives? They've unveiled their plan to have more police officers, and they've said that it's going to cost a lot of money. Can you tell us more about what they're talking about?
Well, this is an absolutely classic Conservative policy in the run-up to a general election. The Prime Minister has promised 8,000 new bobbies on the beat. This is the type of policing that everyone in the sort of home counties, the shires, the blue wall of the southeast really wants to see. Now, 8,000 police officers would cost £650 million, but the Conservatives clearly think it's worth it to make sure that their normal voters, their steady voters, people who voted Conservative all their lives, actually bother to turn up and vote Conservative on polling day. As a little sort of sweetener, if you like, for those voters, the way it's being funded is through a surcharge on the cost of visas to come to the UK, so essentially raising the cost of immigrating to the UK, and raising the cost of healthcare for students who have come over to the UK from abroad. So it's a sort of it's a double gift, if you like, for backbench Conservative MPs who have constituencies, or will have constituencies, the Conservative hope, which are kind of classic blue wall, usually quite a sort of elderly population. And what's particularly good for Rishi Sunak is that he will be able to say that with this new funding, those 8,000 new police officers will bring the level of police officers, the number of police officers in the UK, back to a level higher than in 2010. So it will take the sting out of Labour's perennial argument that the Conservatives have cut policing over their 14 years in power. If this policy comes into effect, there would be more police officers in the UK than the last time Labour was in power.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. Be interesting again to hear, and Catherine Foster as well, interesting to hear how they plan to fund these wonderful ideas.
Well, we're going to be speaking to the Labour Party very shortly, won't we? So we can put that to them. Let's speak now to former Independent Mayor of Middlesbrough, Andy Preston, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Andy. Wow, so much has happened in this campaign trail so far. We've still got 4 weeks left to run. What do you make of it all so far?
I think it's been really boring. I think clearly Labour nothing. I mean, interesting, the surprise star of it to me has been Ed Davey. I mean, as he is the one person who's come across as human. He's willing to laugh at himself. He's compassionate. He's caring. But you know what? It's making no difference in the polls, is it? The Lib Dems are stuck there at the same voting intention level. So it's been really dull, and don't expect that to change. Labour have parked the bus. They're miles ahead. So why should Labour change anything now? If I were them, I wouldn't. So expect nothing. But what I will say is the Tory situation will get worse. They will go from calamity to calamity. We had the awful Holden interview yesterday, which is a new low, and even newer, lower low, but expected to get worse, because when you're on the ropes politically, it never gets better. It only gets worse.
Well, what about, we're talking about the Conservative Party, where is, Rishi appeared to sort of cancel some of his arrangements and so on and so forth, and there is talk that he may well step down. I mean, it's just a rumour at the moment, but sometimes when these rumours start circulating, there's often an element of truth.
Yeah, that's right. What was it with Liz Truss? Did someone say, where's Liz Truss? She wasn't in the chamber, she's hiding under her desk, and you wonder if Rishi's hiding under his desk. I don't know, perhaps. But interestingly, the campaign started out with a completely stupid idea for the Tories, that it was going to be a presidential campaign and about him. And of course, he's completely the wrong person for that job. Rishi Sunak was a head boy at Winchester. He's a head boy kind of person. He's hardworking, he's dependable, he does what he's told. Now, that's great, but that's rubbish about it when it comes to having someone who's the boss and has to make tough decisions and set the tone. He's completely the wrong person. I mean, after the chaos of Liz Truss, I know why they went for him, and I totally get that. But I wouldn't be surprised if they get rid of him now, because can it get much worse? It's going to go downhill anyway. Maybe a fresh start is good. You know, in football, when there's a team doomed and relegation looks almost certain, they change the manager, because you change it and you never know. It might inject a new lease of life. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do change leader in the next week or so.
Right. Wow. Do you think that Rishi Sunak will be able to move past the D-Day debacle? I'm basing on that answer you just gave that he can't.
I don't really think he can. I mean, on the positive side, he issued a really speedy and apparently very sincere apology, which is exactly what you should do, and well done for owning it. But the error is so monstrous that I don't think he can recover. You know, Jeremy Corbyn was unpopular with blue-collar voters, and it wasn't his economic policies, it wasn't his demeanour, it was his perceived lack of patriotism and lack of respect for veterans. That was the perception. And Rishi Sunak is now in the same camp, and I don't believe he can recover from this.
Realistic to imagine that Reform could become the second party then? Because, I mean, of course, the Liberal Democrats are interesting. Ed Davey, as you said, is most entertaining and been the most interesting thing so far. But do you think there's a possibility that actually Nigel is saying that actually he will be the opposition and, in fact, the Tories should defect to him?
Well, I mean, Ed Davey's raised the profile of himself a little bit for Lib Dems. They're not budging in the polls. Reform are the ones to watch, and I think they're polling between 12 and 14% at the moment. But do you know what? If we had proportional representation, I have no doubt that they would be up at 25, which the parties to the right, further to the right, are in France and Belgium and other European countries. So I have no doubt that Farage will grow in popularity. Until we have PR, a party like Reform will not reach those kinds of levels, the 20 to 30%. But categorically, Reform are onto something the public feel overlooked. They're dismissed as populist, aren't they? But people feel overlooked. They're not listened to. Immigration is probably the biggest single issue that people talk about when I meet them. And Reform seem willing to discuss it. And that's really important, to be willing to listen. You don't even have to agree. To actually discuss it is so important. So I don't think... to answer your question, I'm sorry, Reform will not overtake the Tories, I don't think, in the build-up to this election. But if we had PR, they would be miles ahead of the Tories.
And Andy, just before we let you go, I did just want to ask your prediction for what you expect to happen in the Red Wall at the general election.
Yeah, the Red Wall. So using Teesside as an example, an area that I know very, very, very well, before 2019, of the 7 MPs, just 1 was Tory. And then in the 2019 election, we ended up with 5 out of 7. People could not believe it. It was a function of Brexit, the Johnson factor, and other matters. Labour were deeply unpopular. What I have to tell you is categorically, I am certain that every single one of those 5 Tory MPs will be gone on general election day. And I think that will be echoed across the whole country, by the way. But using Teesside as an example, a monstrous, monstrous reclaiming of the Red Wall, building it bigger and actually stronger than ever before. And I think I need to say something that I think that's bad for the North, and I'll tell you why, because this Labour resurgence is broad-based. It's in the South. It's all over the Southeast and different parts of the country. So Labour's going to have to focus attention, affection, and money on the South, and that will be at the cost of the North, in my opinion.
Interesting what you're saying about Reform, though. I think there is a potential that they could actually break through even with the proportional representation system. I just feel that there is an upsurge, and I think the Tories have done some catastrophic things which, unfortunately, will mean that they may not be a viable party.
Yeah.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your thoughts, Andy. Preston, thank you very much.
Very interesting what he was saying about Rishi Sunak. He thinks Rishi Sunak will be replaced this week.
Wow. According
to Andy Preston, the former independent mayor of Middlesbrough. Do you agree with that? gbnews.com/yoursay. We haven't seen the Prime Minister this weekend. Do you think he can bounce back from the D-Day debacle, or do you think that just was unforgivable for so many people?
It's just such a bad judgment call. I just can't even look at it. You sort of think, who does that? Yeah. I'm amongst all the world leaders. It is an event that is commemorating one of the biggest events ever, and I'm going to go off for an interview with ITV, a pre-record.
Yeah, it's a very, very strange decision. It does beg the question, who is advising him, doesn't it? But do keep your views coming in on that one, gbnews.com/yoursay. Now, let's go to France, shall we? Because Emmanuel Macron says the country needs a clear majority in government for serenity and harmony. It's after his shock decision to call a snap election. Well, he made the announcement following a defeat to the far-right National Rally Party in European polls, which has also resulted in Belgium's Prime Minister saying he'll resign. Well, GB News reporter Charlie Peters joins us now. Charlie, this is a real gamble from Macron here, isn't it?
A gamble and also totally unexpected. It came as a huge surprise across Europe and even inside many of the leading commentators in France itself saying, what on earth is going on here? Why has he made this call? In the lead up to these European elections happening and results coming in today, there was almost a panicked approach from Macron's Renaissance Party saying, if we don't come out, if there is a low turnout, we risk facing a significant right-wing victory. But Macron has been fighting from a troubled base for many years now. He's the first incumbent president to not have a majority in the Assembly since 1997. This is the first hung parliament in France since 1988. And all of that division, that lack of power in Macron's hands, has led to several circumstances where he's tried to push through some quite radical reforms from a French perspective. And that's been met with a significant pushback. Just last year, we almost had King Charles III having his first foreign trip to France last March. You'll recall that was cancelled due to significant rioting in Paris at the time, and indeed across many of the urban centres in the country, because he wanted to raise the pension age. But because he has a minority rule in the government, he wasn't able to do so. This and many other situations, particularly around immigration, crime and terrorism, the core campaigning messages of the National Rally, the right-wing party, which saw over 32% of the vote last night, has now led to quite a significant difference. What the National Rally are saying is an unprecedented difference between the opinions of the people in the country and those in the elite, in control, in power. This has led to that schism we saw last night. But it's not just France. We also saw for the first time in Austria their right-wing party top of the polls there. Significant gains for Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, the Freedom Party in Sweden, the Populists in Italy, even the Vox Party in Spain polling around 10%. So a surge for right-wing parties in Europe coming at the expense of the Greens. And it looks as though Macron could be the first significant pro-EU centrist continental leader to really face punishment from those effects.
Do you think this marks a turning point for the unity of the European Union? Because some people are saying, actually, that the European Union is under threat.
The unity of the European Union will be under threat if the unity of the right can be achieved, because there are so many splintered groups on the continent, and the voting system is different to ours. That can work out in their favour in many ways. But there are issues now, particularly in France, about whether or not there is a chance to unite the right, as they say. This National Rally Party polling at 32%, levels not seen since the Second World War. And a corner has been turned in France in the perspective on the National Rally. For many decades, it was associated with collaboration with the Nazis in the Second World War, demagoguery, jackboots, anti-democratic, and all the rest of it. That perspective has shifted quite significantly in recent years. A plurality of French people no longer see the National Rally as that great threat. And so if they can continue to gather votes in some parts of the country, 60% of the French were voting for the National Rally last night. That so-called cordon sanitaire, the protection around them that stops other right-wing parties from associating with Le Pen's party, that's gone. Okay, the protective film that covers this unit, that group, has completely disappeared. And now I think for the first time since the Second World War, there is a realistic possibility of a right-wing government in France of that nature.
Wow. Charlie Peters, thank you very much. Right, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning, and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe 1 or 2 across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still 1 or 2 showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south, and still in those low double figures further north.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway, and your chance to make this summer really special with over £16,000 worth of prizes to be won. That's 15 grand in cash and then a whole host of treats. But you do have to be in it to win it, and here are all the details that you need.
It's our summer spectacular. 3 top prizes that have to be won. There's cash. £15,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like this summer. Plus a brand new iPhone 15 with a set of Apple AirPods. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also treat you to some fun in the sun with £500 to spend at your favourite UK attraction this summer. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Yes, good luck indeed.
Yes, right. Still to come, we'll be talking about a new law coming into force today which affects cat owners. That's next. This is GB News with me and Ellie.
Britain's Newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
I've got a grade 3 astrocytoma brain tumour. Once I was diagnosed, I tried to do my claim with my insurance company and was rejected. They then also cancelled my life insurance and also cancelled my wife's policies as well.
And this is Zurich Insurance, John.
This is Zurich,
and their point was, because you'd had some dizzy spells, which you hadn't told them about, they say dizzy spells equates to a brain tumour, which there's no evidence to support that.
I was with King's College Hospital. They ignored them. King's College Hospital were the experts.
And you were expecting £25,000?
Yeah, that was a critical illness claim.
Critical illness, because you've got a critical illness. Clearly, it couldn't be more critical, could it?
No.
Michelle, you've got a lovely, poorly husband, and you're also worrying about paying the bills and what the future holds.
Yeah.
What impact is this having on you on a day-to-day basis?
I try not to think too much about the future because it does upset me. I'm kind of thinking, when John does go, I'm left with a mortgage to pay and 2 young children.
How old are your kids?
5 and 3.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's incredibly tough.
And are you working?
I haven't worked since having the children.
Right.
And that's a decision we made when we had children.
In the grand scheme of things, this amount of money is a drop in the ocean for a company like Zurich.
Yeah, because I think they could make all this go away.
I've read some of the statement. Zurich said, "We're sorry to hear of the very difficult circumstances Mr. Rendler's family are experiencing. You're terminally ill, and they're calling that difficult circumstance.
The People's Channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but it's actually about you. And we won't ever forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
Now more than ever, it's important to hear
all sides as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
you made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to breakfast. Now, from today, under new laws, all cats in England must be microchipped and registered on a database. It's hard to believe this hasn't already been the case, actually. Data from a cats protection survey suggests that 2.2 million cats in England weren't microchipped.
Are you a cat or a dog person?
Dog. I do like cats as well. I like all animals.
I like cute animals, things with a cute face, but cats...
Cats are cute.
They are cute, but they scratch leather. The charity said that owners of about 300,000 cats were not sure if they were microchipped or not, and pet owners found breaking the rules face a £500 fine if they do not comply within 21 days.
Well, joining us now is our Yorkshire and Humber reporter, Anna Riley. Morning to you, Anna, and tell us about this new law that's coming into place today.
Good morning. Yes, well, I'm joined by Tina Lewis. We're here at Filey Cat Rescue, and Tina and her family have transformed their home as a cat rescue for 260 cats, including Flower, who joins us this morning. But yes, that law comes into effect today. It effectively means that within 21 days from today, cat owners have to microchip their cats or else they face a £500 fine. And according to the charity Cats Protection, they think that around 1.9 million cats in England are still not chipped. Tina, just tell us the importance from your view of having your cat microchipped.
Oh, it's major importance because we get so many stray cats or you know, just very friendly cats even handed to us or in trouble out there, maybe had an accident, road traffic accident. And if we can scan them, which we do immediately, we can actually notify the owner within minutes. You know, all the data is in, you know, available to us, and we can actually get the owner to us, which is really important. If they've had a road traffic accident, you know, they're going to want to be there with the cat and make decisions. And but I mean, maybe they've been lost, maybe they've got frightened, they've run away, and you know, we find them. It would be wonderful if all cats were microchipped. They would all get home really quick in time for tea.
Bless them. And in terms of the process, it's not that difficult at the vets, is it? And it's around 20 to 30 pounds.
Yes, yeah, they all vary. Some of the pet clubs, healthy pet club, things like, you know, they include with vaccinations, you know, a free microchip. It doesn't hurt them. We do it here. All our cats are microchipped before they leave, and any that come in and are reunited with their owners are chipped before they leave also, so that it never happens again. And I can tell you that anyone who actually gets their cat back are absolutely desperate to microchip their cat and just wish they'd done it before. So, you know, please do it.
Definitely. And all it is in that chip, it just identifies to the address of the owner.
Yes,
a vet or a charity like
phone number, really. Phone number, email, and address, and the name of the cat and how old they are. And that's it, you know, but it's as simple as that. You have to remember, though, to register them. So just because you microchip, you do have to register them also. So it's just a little, you know, a minute job, but many people do forget to do that bit.
And as at the cat rescue, how do you feel with cats now being brought into the same law as dogs? Because, of course, dogs at the moment, you do have to chip your dog already.
2016, wasn't it? On every account, cats should be equal to dogs. We love them just as much. You know, they're part of our families and we want them back, basically, if we can get them back. You know, I feel so sorry for them. Some, you know, they're really friendly, some of them that come in, and they obviously belong to someone, and someone's out there missing them. And not all, we can put them on social media, but not all people are on social media. There's, you know, the more older people, you know, may not be. You know, they're sort of putting posters in shops and things, but you know, it really does make a difference. It's just a scan. You know, so yeah, it's so important. It really is, and it's cheap as well. It's for a lifetime. You do it once. It's just like a little grain, and it just goes into the neck. None of them really flinch, even. You know. So
thank you so much, Tina, and thanks to Flower as well. So there we have it. Yes, that new rule coming in today. If you're a cat owner and your cat's not microchipped, get to do that, or else you face a £500 fine.
OK, Anna Riley, good to see you. And Flower this morning. He's very chilled there.
Bless Flower, bless her.
Flower. Thank you very much, Anna.
Yes, right. Stay with us. Still to come. We'll be speaking to Shadow Schools Minister Kat McKinnell. That is next.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. In Tyne and Wear, the A167 is closed eastbound along Stamford Road towards the A191 in Newcastle after an accident. In County Durham on the A19, there's a lane closed southbound where someone's broken down between the Portrack interchange and the A66 just outside Middlesbrough, causing delays from Wolverston. In Leicestershire on the A50, there's a lane closed eastbound after an accident between Junction 1 and the M1 at Long Eaton, causing queues. In London, the A233 is closed each way along Main Road in Biggin Hill after an accident overnight. On the M25 in Kent, there are clockwise delays from Junction 4 at Orpington to 5 for the M26 because of roadworks. Queues on the M26 towards there too. On the Isle of Wight, Sandown Road in Shanklin's closed because of an accident, and train services are suspended between Shanklin and Ryde Pierhead because of a faulty train. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
You'll have one of me one day.
Yeah, for dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back to Breakfast. The time is 8:36 and we can cross live now to Shadow Schools Minister Kat McKinnell, who joins us on the programme now. Good to see you this morning, Kat. And you're here today to announce 3,000 new school-based nurseries. This is the new Labour childcare plan. Many people, I'm sure, will welcome this news, but they'll be asking, how are you going to fund it?
So, yes, we are delighted to be able to announce a plan for how to deliver on the childcare places that the government have already promised an awful lot of families, but unfortunately many are finding there just aren't the places available in their area to be able to access it. We know how important childcare is, not just for a child's development, so that they have that opportunity to be in a really good quality early setting and be school ready when the time comes, but also for parents to get out to work and be able to really improve their standard of living as well. So in terms of the proposal, it's to really utilise some of the space that's emerging in our school system, because we have a falling birth rate currently that it's working its way through our primary system, and to use some of that capacity that's there and to fund the conversion into nursery places, and also ensure that we can ensure the high quality staffing of that childcare support as well. And we'll pay for this by closing the loopholes on private schools, the current VAT and business rates exemptions that they have. This is part of what that money will go towards, and it will really help to build that childcare of the future that we're very keen to ensure that every family has access to.
So this is going to be funded with is this a 20% VAT that you're going to charge to private schools? So that will raise about 1.7 billion. We heard earlier from Labour that they were actually going to get 6,500 more teachers as well. So is that over a parliament, or is that every year? If you're going to use that money also to fund the nurseries and 6,500 teachers, and Emily Thornberry yesterday talked about using that for breakfast clubs as well. So could you just sort of clarify that for us?
Yes, happy to. So in terms of the private school, yes, you're right, it'll raise between, well, we think a conservative estimate is 1.3 to 1.5 billion, and that will ensure that will be an annual amount that will be raised from that tax that we will impose. And we really want to use that money to fund additional teachers in our state schools, and also to now support as well this change in the schools that we need to make to ensure we have the childcare places, because it's so important that not only if we're going to really fund our state sector, which we want to do with this change in the taxation, that we put that money in at the earliest point possible. And so part of that will be funding early speech and language therapy, making sure we have the teaching workforce we need, but also making sure we have these childcare places. In terms of the breakfast clubs, that will be paid for from clamping down on tax avoidance. We know the government took up some of our proposals on closing down the loopholes that non-DOMs enjoy, the super rich, and also have said that they're going to clamp down on some of the tax dodging that goes on. But we have a much more comprehensive plan that will bring in additional revenue from those measures. And so we want to see those go towards funding our state sector in general, right from the early years right through to when children leave secondary school, where we know there's a massive shortage of teachers at the moment, particularly in specialist subjects like maths.
So, sorry, could you just come back on to the thing where is it 6,500 more teachers over a parliament or a year? Because I just wanted to clarify that.
I mean, obviously the revenue will be raised on an annual basis, but we want to see 6,500 more teachers generally in our state school system. We've seen that the government are missing their recruitment targets year on year for teachers, filling the places that they need to within our state system. So we need to see an injection of activity to ensure that we have the teaching workforce we need. I mean, the other side
side of this is we need to make sure that schools are places where teachers want to work, that they're an attractive place to be, that children want to be as well. And so making sure that we have sufficient workforce will also stop so many teachers leaving. We see a large problem with retention as much as recruitment. So we want to see that across the board. But obviously, as we invest in the early years, so we invest in this childcare pledge, and we've seen that the government have made some proposals, quite ambitious proposals on childcare places, but unfortunately just have not had a plan to actually deliver those places in practice. So we have come up with this plan. We have very clear means to fund it, and we're really hoping to get into government on July the 5th and get on with starting this work of making sure that children have the childcare places that they need and families have that childcare support they need to get into work.
Concern for you that you have a long list of pledges now that are essentially based on taxes that people do not necessarily need to pay. There's new research out this morning that says more than a quarter of parents would remove their children from private school if this VAT on private school fees comes in. So you could instantly lose huge amounts of money from parents just simply not wanting to pay that. And then on the loopholes of the non-don tax status, well, those very rich individuals could simply jet off to Monaco, couldn't they? So you are heavily reliant on two taxes there that people don't necessarily need to pay, and that must really concern you.
So these have been very carefully costed. In terms of the VAT on private schools, I know that there's been a lot of scaremongering amongst the private schools about the impact that might occur as a result of some of these tax changes. But in reality, we've seen private school fees go up and up and up above inflation for many years, and we have not seen any reduction in the number of children attending. So there is no evidence that it would have the impact that has been suggested.
Can I just interrupt? Yep. Yes, you may say that they've gone up, but you're talking about a 20% immediately. There are already some schools, so Tring Park, you've got Alton School. There are many schools that are saying this is the last straw, and those pupils will then flood the state sector. What provision have you got? Because even the OBR are looking at this policy and saying it may not raise the money, and if it doesn't, suggesting you scrap it. And what about the teachers out of work as well? Even the unions, who are traditionally Labour-based or supporters, are looking at this and are concerned about it.
So I think it's very important to recognise that private schools are businesses, and they need to, make sure that they're not pricing themselves out of the market and the ability for parents to pay. And I think that means making potentially some decisions about how they spend the money and their income. And it may be that they need to absorb some of this cost, in terms of VAT, and can cut their cloth accordingly, which is what many state schools have had to do for many years. And the gap in funding for a child attending state school as opposed to a child attending a private school has grown significantly because of these above inflation rises that we've seen for parents. And obviously that they're decisions that private schools will have to make. In terms of the assessment, I think the Institute for Fiscal Studies did a really thorough report, which we're relying on in terms of what we believe will be the impacts of this policy. And we know that there is the capacity within the state sector for any child that needs to attend. And I think one thing we need to make sure is, though, that we have a much more coordinated system of making sure that there are places in our school system and they're available in the right places as well. And we think the local authorities will have a really important role in that, and they have always traditionally, but we think that the rules need to be changed to make sure that local authorities really do work closely with the whole local school community to make sure that the places are in the right place. And in terms of the tax dodging, we know, the government admit there's a huge amount to go at here, and I think it's about resourcing, it's about prioritisation, and it's about also clamping down on people who really are super rich and not paying their fair share. And we know the government took up a part of Labour's proposal of clamping down on, the super rich who don't pay their fair share of taxes here, but they left some gaping loopholes that we think should still be closed. So there's a huge amount to go at here, and really it's a matter of fairness and choice. And these are choices that a Labour government would make to ensure not only that people are paying their fair share of tax, but that taxation revenue is being spent where it can have most effect. And that is for our children who are coming through from the earliest years that we know are struggling within our state system and are not getting the teaching and the support that they need. Our schools are brilliant, but there's a limit to what they can do if they don't have the full workforce that they need. And so we need to make that decision about how we pay for that, because it really is an investment, not just in those children, but it's an investment in our whole future as a country.
All right, well, listen, Kat, I mean, as you know, you said they're businesses, those private schools, as you know, if they fold, then you won't get the money. If they, you know, and also with regard to some of those non-doms and the very rich people, they often find another loophole. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with regard to that. Kat McKinnell, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're also going to be hearing from the Tories in the next hour on the programme as well. So do stay with us. After the break, we're going to be going through the papers with Dawn Newsom and Paula London. That's next.
This is GB News and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians in the media, but actually it's about you.
And we won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear
all sides
as you make your decision ahead of polling day.
We're here for you.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Today we've got two fantastic individuals who have invented a teddy bear to help children who are suffering with mental health.
Yes, so Lynn and Samantha Crilly came up with the idea for the Trouble Muncher toy following Samantha's own battle with an eating disorder and OCD.
Yes, the teddy comes with a notepad and encourages its owners to write down what's troubling them, and then they can pop the note into the rucksack on the bear's back.
I struggled with mental health most of my life, actually. And, oh, no, it's fine. I've got one. I feel quite sorry for you. But and one thing I always did was message my mum, and it was a thought disassociation kind of technique. I would message you, even now, I message you thoughts that come into my mind, but massively when I was younger. And I thought, what happens if you're younger and you don't have this?
Yeah, and I think in today's technology-fueled world, I think we go back to basics, and it just helps them to process by writing it down. Everything's so instant these days.
So it's like an indirect way of telling your parents how you're feeling, what you're going through. Such a great idea. What's the feedback been from parents who have got a trouble muncher for their kids? What you got any stories?
It's been really good. In one household, he sits on the kitchen side, and I think during the day, the parents, the children put their worries in or at night, and then they know that their parents will look at it during the day. And it's gone into some schools as well.
You'd imagine you'd want one of these trouble munchers in every classroom and in every school up and down the country, because children who are being bullied, for example, who feel like they can't tell their parents, they're too embarrassed to talk about it. This is such an important tool, isn't it, for children to communicate that?
Yeah, well, you were saying Mum's a mental health counsellor, and you had a young child who had Snapchat AI. So you talk to an AI in Snapchat, and that's what they talk to now.
The People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good morning. Right, joining us to go through what's making the news is former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Newsom, also broadcaster Paula London. All right, Dawn, you've got an education story.
Yeah, just obviously I know we're short of time. This is a Times Education Commission, which is a study they've been looking at over a year now, and it's a poll of education experts and parents, and only a fifth of voters think schools prepare children for the world of work, compared with 2/3 who believe the education system does not give pupils the skills skills they need for the job. And this is talking about practical things like, you know, how to manage basic household budgets, how to cook nutritionally.
Mortgages.
Yeah, mortgages. How to do all the stuff you actually, the tools you really need in life. And also failing to prepare children's mental health for coping with the real world as well. You know, I mean, wrapping them up in cotton wool and saying, you know, everyone's going to be nice to you, because the real world isn't like that, unfortunately. So it's a very interesting survey. Whether actually anyone does anything about it is not, but is another question. But I mean, it's like, you know, I do fear for children who have been brought up sometimes, you know, in the cotton wool world, and they go out into the real life, and it's going to be a real struggle. Mental health
surveys, they keep doing surveys, but then there's nothing happening after the survey.
Yeah. Paula, should we have a look at this story in the Mail? It's about Brits behaving badly.
Yeah, I mean, so many stories are saying how badly the Brits are behaving in Mallorca, but I think some Brits will be pleased to know, apparently, the Germans are even worse. And one of the main roads now in Mallorca is called Beer and Ham Street. But the Germans aren't getting drunk on a pint of beer with a full English. They're just having lots of sausages and copious amounts of beer and shots. And apparently, the locals, it's quite interesting, because I always think a lot of people don't like the Brits too much because of Brexit, etc. But the locals are saying they can't ban the Germans because the EU will go crazy. So it's OK to say bad things about the Brits, but they're more cautious about people when they're from Europe. So, yeah, they're causing problems. They're buying a lot of houses as well in the area, which were predominantly for the locals. So, yeah, it's not all the Brits. The Germans are getting
the amount of Germans that own second homes in Mallorca in particular is through the roof. And, you know, when I was on the tabloids, every summer, if you splashed on the Germans and the beach towels on the sunbeds, you would sell loads of papers. So,
yeah.
Dawn, I want to ask you about this one, the key to athletic success. This one, research finds malevolent traits could be the key to success.
Well, we both like our sport and our fitness, don't we, Nana? That's why I picked this one. Obviously, you've got the European Championships going on in Rome at the moment, the Olympics start in Paris next month. But research by Nottingham Trent University, the study is in athletic coach relationships, but has shown sort of like, you know, the things we regard as the malevolent traits, i.e. narcissism, psychopathy and Machiavellianism, all these traits are perceived negatively in the real world, but for athletes, they actually make you a better athlete. And it's like, if you can apply this to most big businesses. I mean, in Fleet Street, if everyone that got to the top in Fleet Street was basically a psychopath. And I think there's been studies into CEOs of big companies as well. Most of them had psychopathic tendencies as well.
They're either in jail or CEOs, a lot of psychopaths. So
You sort of slightly have to be, wouldn't you, to be able to just focus and get on with it, close everything off.
Yeah, you have to be very, very driven.
Yeah.
It's not always... I mean, not all psychopaths commit murder, and not all murderers are psychopaths. So, you know, it doesn't always have to be a bad thing, but you have to be very, very driven. But there are some crazy athletes. You know, remember the ice skating story when they were very competitive?
Oh,
and
God,
they got
that was...
maim someone, you know, and then obviously some people take...
Yeah, what's her name?
Things they shouldn't take when they're running to improve because they don't want to lose. Maybe that's because they've got psychopathic tendencies and can't bear to lose. But, yeah, no, I don't... It's not always a bad thing.
While we're on it, quickly, Dina Asher-Smith last night, 100 metres gold, first medal in 5 years. Congratulations. You're not a psychopath, just a brilliant athlete.
Aww. Very well said, Dawn. We didn't even get a chance for sport this hour because we were talking to the Labour Party, so I'm glad that you covered that piece for us as well. We needed that. Really good to see you both this morning.
Nice
Dawn Newsom and Paula London. Really good to have your company.
Right, well, keep your thoughts coming. gbnews.com/your say. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments on all the news that we bring you. But now let's get an update from your weather with Ellie Glazier.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. It's a bit of a cloudy start for many of us this morning and a damp start too, although there are some drier and brighter interludes on the way. The area of rain that we've seen sinking its way south and eastwards overnight eventually clears its way towards the southeast, but could lead to some travel disruption during the morning rush hour across eastern parts of England. It's closely followed behind by plenty of heavy and blustery showers, these perhaps turning to some longer spells of rain across parts of Scotland. Parts of Wales and southwest England seeing the best of the sunshine this afternoon, but temperatures here only around 18 or 19 degrees and struggling to reach much more than the low to mid-teens further north. As we go through the rest of Monday, there is still going to be plenty of showers around through the latter half of the afternoon, but parts of southwestern England and Wales generally staying that little bit drier and brighter, so some late sunshine here. Heavy showers still across northern parts of England and maybe 1 or 2 across Northern Ireland too, but generally staying a little bit cloudier for parts of Scotland, and those showers do continue to push in from the north, pushing their way southwards into Monday evening and into the start of Tuesday. So those showers do continue for a time through Monday evening, but they will gradually start to ease overnight, so generally turning drier for most of us as we go into the start of Tuesday. As it's turning drier, there will be plenty of clear spells around, and that will lead to temperatures dropping a little lower than we saw on the previous night, particularly across the southern half of the UK, where we could see some rural frost in places, particularly in those rural areas, with temperatures dropping down into the low single figures. That does mean that Tuesday starts a bit of a drier and brighter day for many of us. Still 1 or 2 showers around, particularly across parts of Scotland and along some eastern coasts as we head towards the afternoon, and some cloud bubbling up as well, so perhaps a bit of a cloudier end to the day. The showers across eastern parts of England, perhaps not quite as heavy as on Monday, but temperatures are still a little below average for the time of year. Only the mid to high teens further south and still in those low double figures further north.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in Tyne and Wear. The A167 is closed eastbound along Stamford Road towards the A191 in Newcastle after an accident. The M6 in Lancashire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 32 and 33 south of Lancaster, causing delays. Trains have been stopped between Leeds and York because of the signalling problem at Harrogate. In Leicestershire on the A50, the inside lane's closed eastbound after an accident between junction 1 and the M1 at Long Eaton, causing queues. In London, the A233 is closed each way along Main Road in Biggin Hill after an accident. On the M25 in Kent, it's very slow clockwise from junction 4 at Orpington to 5 for the M26, with queues along the M26 because of roadworks. On the Isle of Wight, Sandown Road in Shanklin's closed because of an accident, and train services are suspended between Shanklin and Ryde Pierhead because of a faulty train. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're making this summer funner, with 3 incredible prizes to be won. First, a fantastic £15,000 in tax-free cash that you can spend on anything you like. Next, there's the latest iPhone 15 with a brand new set of Apple AirPods. And finally, £500 to spend at the UK attraction of your choice. The summer fun could be on us. For another chance to win the iPhone, treats and £15,000 cash, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB06 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 28th of June. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said storm. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
It went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
A very good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock on Monday, the 10th of June.
Now, this is Breakfast with Ellie Costello and me, Nana Acquia. Here's what's leading the news this morning. The Prime Minister continues to avoid media scrutiny over the weekend as the Conservatives today pledged to recruit 8,000 new police officers. We'll be speaking to Policing Minister Chris Philp in just a moment.
Labour pledges to help working parents by creating 3,000 new school-based nurseries.
And the Liberal Democrats are set to be the first party to launch their manifesto today, with the Tories and Labour to follow on later in the week.
Tributes continue to flow in for TV doctor Michael Mosley after his body was found after a 5-day search in Greece.
A night of election bombshells in Europe as Emmanuel Macron calls a snap French election as right-wing parties surge.
Hello, it's a cloudy and damp start for many of us this morning, but there is some sunshine on the way this afternoon. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
Well, let's start with politics, shall we? Because it's not just election fever here in the UK, but also across the continent as well.
And over the weekend, the Prime Minister continued to dodge the media in the aftermath of the D-Day debacle.
But nonetheless, today the Conservatives have promised a new £650 million policing plan, which would put 8,000 new officers on the street.
Whilst Labour today are promising to save parents £400 a year as they commit to delivering free breakfast clubs in primary schools.
And it's also a big day for the Liberal Democrats, as Ed Davey is set to launch his party's manifesto later on this morning, the first of the major parties to do so. And with no Prime Minister doing the rounds, Tory chair Richard Holden was forced to face the media during a bit of a car crash interview yesterday. Let's take a listen.
How do you answer the charge? It just looks like an appalling stitch-up, and you are part of a self-serving elite.
This interview is about Emily Thornberry's comments today, and when she admitted that it's going to be our children across the country who pay the price for Labour's decision.
I come back to the question. It looks like a stitch-up. Chairman of the party, short list of one, just before nominations close. How is that not an appalling stitch-up and anti-democratic?
Emily Thornberry today has completely admitted.
So you can't justify the way you have been parachuted into Basildon and Billericay. You're not denying it's a stitch-up and it's anti-democratic.
Emily Thornberry today has admitted...
I'm going to stop you now. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. You said in an interview earlier this year you were bloody loyal to the North East. What happened to that?
John, I've already answered these questions.
No, you haven't.
Well, GB News political correspondent Olivia Utley joins us now. Very good morning to you, Olivia. I mean, the optics of this are really not good, are they? Richard Holden refusing, quite frankly, to be held to account. And then we haven't even seen the Prime Minister this weekend.
Yeah, the optics are pretty bad for the Conservative Party. That was a thoroughly embarrassing interview with Richard Holden there. He claims that there were questions that had been agreed in advance, and the Sky political correspondent who we heard speaking there had gone off script. But from other correspondents, we hear that that actually isn't the case. So it does seem to be a case of Richard Holden simply refusing to answer this question. Holden won his seat in the northeast of England in a shock victory in 2019. It was one of those red wall seats which weren't expected to turn Conservative, and polling really suggests that it's going to go back to Labour in this election. So Holden appears to have managed to get himself selected for a much safer seat over in Essex. Meanwhile, of course, we have heard radio silence from the Prime Minister over the weekend after his D-Day gaffe last week. He is going to be back on the airwaves later today, with the Conservatives launching their new police Bobbies on the Beat policy. They're planning to up the number of police officers in local communities by 8,000 to bring the number back up to pre-2010 levels. That's likely to go down very well with the sort of Conservative base, that blue wall, and particularly as it's going to be paid for by increasing the cost of health care for students coming into the UK, and also by raising the cost of visas. So the Conservatives are really hoping that today their election campaign might get back on track, but there's a very long way to go.
Over to the Labour Party now. They are looking to have new nursery places. They're about to announce something today. That'll be very interesting. We did speak earlier to one of their shadow ministers with regard to education to find out more about that policy. What can you tell us about what Labour's plans are?
Labour is promising to increase the number of schools with nurseries attached to them. Essentially, what Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary, wants to do is integrate early years care. At the moment, we have separate childcare for children under school age, and then children go into schools. Labour wants to see that all amalgamated together, and they hope that that would mean a more smooth transition for parents and children going from the nursery stage to the primary school stage. They also want Labour to introduce breakfast clubs across the country free for primary school age children. Now, that is a very, very costly policy indeed, and it'll be really, really interesting to see in that manifesto, which will be launched on Thursday, exactly how they're planning to pay for it. At the moment, we've heard that they're planning to pay for it through scrapping VAT exemption for private schools. But of course, that spending commitment has been promised to a lot of different policy areas. So I think there's going to be all eyes on Rachel Reeves on Thursday as we see a more thorough breakdown. Everyone in Westminster says that she is a sort of maths financial whiz kid. That's going to be put to the test on Thursday.
Yes, it certainly is.
We just spoke to Kat McKinnon, and she said that they would fund it with some tax evasion. People are evading tax as well, so that we'll see how that goes down.
But Olivia, as you say, it is the week of the manifestos, isn't it? And we've got the Lib Dems launching theirs today. Any idea of what we can expect in that manifesto?
Well, I think what we're going to see from the Lib Dems is more about schools and more about helping mental health practitioners in primary schools and secondary schools across the country. That's one of Ed Davies' big election themes. We've also heard from Ed Davey over the weekend. He's done a very moving interview about his son who has severe learning difficulties. He's 16 years old, and something that Ed Davey is really passionate about, and what I think will feed through into the Lib Dem manifesto, is improving care for children with severe learning difficulties, making it much easier for parents to access that sort of care. Again, there will be eyes on how these policies are planning to be costed, because actually some of the Lib Dem commitments are even more expensive, go even further than what Labour has promised. But like Keir Starmer, Ed Davey has promised that the Liberal Democrats wouldn't raise any of the big three taxes, so national insurance, income tax or VAT. Obviously, we're not expecting the Liberal Democrats to come to power, so in a way it's not quite so important how their manifesto is costed. But of course, we could realistically end up in a situation, if the polls were to narrow over the next few weeks, where Labour is incapable of getting a full majority and would need the Liberal Democrats on side in some sort of pact or official coalition, in which case Ed Davey's manifesto could end up being very important indeed.
Olivia Utley, thank you very much. That's Olivia Utley, GB News' political correspondent.
Now, throughout the election campaign, we'll be hearing from people across the United Kingdom about what really matters to you.
And today we meet Marie Carmen from Leamington Spa.
My name is Marie Carmen, I'm 32 and I'm from Leamington Spa. I'm a health and fitness coach for mums, and I used to be a nurse at the Birmingham Children's Hospital. So I know the government have announced the fact that they're going to increase childcare hours for children younger, and actually I think my son, who's now 1, qualifies for that in September, so I really hope that continues. Also more support around enterprise. You know, I'm currently raising investment for my business, and the way the economy is at the moment, the climate, it's quite hard. I know there are things around SEIS, EIS, but I think if businesses could have more support to grow, you know, financially, that would be really helpful. I've got 3 small children, 2 at school, 1 at nursery. You know, cost of living is huge. Like our food bill, if I'm lucky to get it under £100 a week, you know, and I cook from scratch, I'd be, you know, I'm lucky. So I think more help, you know, with day-to-day things, you know, when is actually food prices going to come down? I know speaking to a lot of my clients, they find the same. You know, just day-to-day things. If you want to take your children on activities, you want to go on holiday, just everything feels really inaccessible at the moment. When I was nursing, I used to vote Labour. You know, they have always been the party for the NHS, for, you know, teachers and stuff. So I hope that, you know, I hope that is the case. If Conservative can demonstrate more for, you know, enterprise and those key things that I've just spoke about, potentially them. But if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not a massive fan of Keir Starmer. So I don't know.
Mary thinks we're going to be hearing from lots of GB News viewers throughout the course of this election campaign. Well, let's speak now to Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire, Chris Philp, who joins us now. Good to see you this morning, Chris. And before we get into policing, which I know you're here to talk about, I just wanted to ask if we can expect to hear or see from the Prime Minister today, because he's been in hiding over the weekend, hasn't he, after the D-Day debacle?
Well, I'm not sure about hiding, but I would expect, I don't know what his schedule is today, but I would expect him to be out and about, meeting voters and journalists somewhere up and down the UK today. So I'm sure we'll see him energetically bouncing around on the campaign trail.
All right, Chris, so can you outline the Conservative plan then for crime and policing? Because I know you were talking about recruiting more police officers. So can you tell us what we can expect on your manifesto with regard to that?
Well, so first of all, it's worth saying that we've already got record ever numbers of police officers. Last year, we hit 149,000 officers. That's more than we've ever had before at any time in this country's history. And at the same time, according to the Office for National Statistics, overall crime is falling. But we'd like to go further, and that's what today's announcement is about. And firstly, we are pledging to recruit another 8,000 police officers on top of the record numbers we've already got. Those extra 8,000 officers will be dedicated to neighbourhood policing. That means patrolling your local high street, patrolling the areas where you and me and your listeners and viewers live, visibly patrolling, catching criminals, preventing crime, reassuring the public, in order to make sure that those crime figures, which are overall crime figures which are falling, continue to fall. We're also giving the police more powers. For example, if someone's mobile phone's been stolen, and the Find My iPhone, other mobile phones of course are available, tells you where that phone is, the public expect the police to go and retrieve it straight away. Now sometimes that currently requires a magistrate's warrant. We'll give them powers to go and retrieve that stolen phone straight away. We're also going to be banning things like signal jammers that are used to steal some cars, particularly higher end cars, and we're going to be increasing the sentences for supplying knives to young people. So a whole package of measures to fight crime, but most importantly, an extra 8,000 police officers on top of the record numbers that we already have.
You need a more holistic approach, though, to fighting crime, don't you? It's all well and good talking about bobbies on the beat and having more of a presence on the streets. We've got a massive backlog in our courts. We've got prisons at capacity. Those prisons falling down in an awful state of disrepair. We need to look at the judicial system, don't we? We need to look at the prison system. There needs to be reform in so many sectors in order to actually tackle crime.
Well, we've got more people in prison now than ever before because the police have done a good job in arresting criminals, and sentences now are generally longer. I know my colleagues in the Ministry of Justice, who are responsible for prisons, are in the process of building 20,000 extra prison places. I think about 5,900 of those extra prison places will be on stream by the end of next year. But we're also, in addition to just the extra police, we're giving them new technology that catches criminals as well. For example, live facial recognition catches wanted criminals who haven't previously been caught. They can get picked up when they walk down the street. We've been trialling this at my request in Croydon, the borough that I represent in Parliament. And in just the last few months, Croydon police have caught, the most recent figure I got from the borough superintendent last week was 135 wanted criminals have been caught and arrested. One man was wanted for 2 rapes, one dating back to 2017. So that new technology is helping to catch criminals who would not otherwise be caught.
Well, Chris, that's great, but what are you going to do with the prisoners when these people when you catch them? Because Labour have unveiled their plans to build more prisons. They're going to bypass planning laws to do it. But where are we going to put these people with this wonderful new police and all these crimes? Where are the prisoners going to go? You are releasing people, planning to release people from jail early just to make up space.
Well, I've already said a second ago that my colleagues in the Ministry of Justice who run the prison system are in the process, as we speak, of building 20,000 extra prison places. And of those extra 20,000 places, 5,900 will be ready by the end of next year. And just to give that context, the prison population is currently just over 80,000. So 20,000 extra places, when they're all built, is like almost a 1/4, 25% increase in the number of prison places in total. So the MOJ are working on that as we speak.
I wanted to ask you about your colleague Richard Holden, the chairman of the party. He was questioned over the weekend about being parachuted into Basildon and Billericay, that safe seat in Essex, a shortlist of one, the chairman of the Tory party. He was asked whether it was undemocratic. He would not answer the question. He would not be held to account. The optics on this are not good, are they? If you've got the chairman of the party refusing to answer questions about being parachuted into a safe seat, and you've got the Prime Minister pulling out of media interviews on Saturday and essentially going into hiding over the weekend.
Well, I mean, the Prime Minister will be out and about this week, meeting the public and talking to journalists. In terms of the party chairman, Richard Holden, I think he has spoken to a number of journalists since the selection. And, of course, I think when he went before the party membership or the party's executive in Basildon and Billericay, there was a vote and he was unanimously adopted. Now, because it was very short notice, it was just a very short time before the nomination deadline, he was the only candidate put forward because of that very short time frame. But you know, when you get a snap election and some seats haven't selected, it's a bit of a scramble, and so you get these emergency rules sometimes used. But I'm sure Richard Holden will be giving lots of interviews in the coming weeks. I'm sure he'd be delighted to come on to GB News as well, as I always am.
Finally, Chris, why should anyone trust you? After you guys have been running this thing for the last 14 years, things feel like they are pretty bad. Why should anyone trust that under the Tories things will be any better?
Well, let's look at some of the facts. You know, when Labour left office 14 years ago, unemployment was 8%. It's now gone down to 4%. We've just recently jumped up, thanks partly to our Brexit trade freedoms. We've jumped up. We're now the world's 4th largest exporter. We were 7th previously, so our exports and our trade is surging. Our GDP growth, the growth in our economy in the first quarter of this year was joint chop in the G7, and the IMF forecasts that in the coming years, if we have good Conservative policies, I think our growth is going to exceed that of France and Italy, and I think even Germany as well. We're cutting taxes, national insurance. We've just cut that this year by £900 for the average working person, a big tax cut. We now, after all of the difficulties of COVID, the war in Ukraine, globally high inflation, it's not just a problem in the UK, it's a problem around the world. We've now got wages consistently growing faster than inflation. Wages growing at about 6%, inflation now down to about 2.3%. So all of those things I think are important to achieve, and also crime. I mean, we talked about crime, record police numbers, and crime has halved since 2010. Those are all achievements that we can be, I think, as a party proud of. We've also got a plan for the future, reducing immigration, for example, whereas Keir Starmer has no plan at all. That was painfully exposed during that TV debate last week. He was asked about, what are you going to do about the cost of living pressures that are being faced around the world? And Keir Starmer did not have an answer to that question. There are so many questions where Keir Starmer has nothing to say. He is going to come under a lot of pressure in the coming weeks to answer those questions. He can't be seriously asking to become Prime Minister with no plan. We do have a plan. It is working, and I'm confident about taking that message to the public across the country through interviews like this, but also in my own neighbourhood in Croydon as well.
OK, Chris Philp, Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire. Good to see you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
And as Chris mentioned, his constituency of Croydon South, here are the other candidates in the seat. For Reform UK, it's Bob Bromley. Green, it's Elaine Garrett. Liberal Democrats, Richard Howard. Workers' Party of Britain, Kulsum Hussain. Conservative, Chris Philp. Independent Mark Samuel and Labour Ben Taylor.
Yes, and we also mentioned the seat of Basildon and Billericay in Essex. So here are the candidates standing there. The British Democratic Party, Christopher Bateman standing for them. Reform UK, Stephen Connolly. Green, Stuart Goshwak. Labour, Alex Harrison. Conservative, Richard Holden. Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition Party, Dave Murray. Liberal Democrat, Edward Sainsbury.
Well, still to come, we'll be taking a look to Britain's newsroom. What promises to be a very busy show, but that's next. This is GB News.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting.
I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frothy in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, and we are Britain's election channel.
This vote may seem to be about the politicians and the media, but it's actually about you. We won't forget that.
Join us up and down the country as we follow every moment together.
More than ever, it's important to hear all sides
as you make your decision in the run-up to polling day.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel. Britain's election channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Almost half of those seeking to have an affair are happier with their job than with their primary relationship. But what exactly does a cheater do for a living?
Well, medical assistants and nurses, surprisingly, top the lists of professions for female cheaters. And it's jobs in IT or tech for male cheaters, which I think is less of a surprise.
No.
This is all according to a survey by the dating site Ashley Madison.
OK, so why do people cheat? To answer this, we're joined now by broadcaster and psychotherapist Lucy Beresford. Good morning, Lucy.
Morning, Lucy.
So, is it OK of me to say naughty nurses in this day and age? Am I going to get cancelled for that?
You're out.
Yeah, I'm out.
Been
Come on,
cancelled.
see ya.
There's the door.
But yes, you're talking about the caring professions, and I think it's very appropriate.
I'm surprised by that.
Women, well, because they're very nurturing, very loving, very giving, whereas the males who are in tech and IT, very strategic.
Is there a link between high-pressure jobs, maybe nurses infamously, you know, they're working long hours, underpaid, stressed out? Is there a link between jobs of that nature and cheating, maybe as a relief?
Absolutely. Is it just about sex, or is it about emotional connection? Is it about emotional validation? And increasingly, people are discovering that their primary relationship is just not a place where they feel safe.
This survey found that personality didn't actually come into it that much. It was about half and half if you're an introvert or an extrovert that you'd be likely to have an affair.
I think that's right. And I think that just speaks to the fact that all people want to have a good emotional connection. So it doesn't matter whether you're really social or whether you're someone who has to recharge your batteries in private time, that actually we only ever want three things in life. We want to feel safe, we want to feel loved, but we also want to feel heard. And in increasingly a number of marriages and long-term relationships, we get into grooves, we get into ruts, and we stop hearing our partner, we stop listening to them, and they stop listening to us.
The People's Channel.
Now, Britain's newsroom is coming up at 9:30. Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner are here to tell us all about it. Morning, you two.
Morning. Well, division in the Labour Party over this private schools VAT policy, isn't it? They're going to start tearing a strip out of each other.
Well, credit to Camilla Tominey yesterday, because she got, what's her name, Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Attorney General, to admit that there will be bigger class sizes as a result of 40-odd thousand kids being taken out of private schools, slapped down today by Bridget Phillipson, the Shadow Education Secretary, who said she's wrong. I don't think she's wrong. I think she's let the cat out the bag.
Yeah.
If you're closed down with 40,000, we think, kids.
And that's just a Conservative estimate.
That's a Conservative
that's just an estimate.
And what they're trying to say, Labour, is, but the falling birth rate. Well, that doesn't help you if your kid's 14. You're going to have to take him or her out of a private school because you can't pay the VAT that Labour are going to put on there. It's going to be a chaotic effect on state schools.
But also the OBR are questioning it as well. They want to say raise 1.7 billion. And unions are now looking at it and going, well, the teachers aren't happy if they lose their job.
They're going to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
And this idea that all these schools have got empty classroom places, I bet people watching this thinking, I can't get my child into the school I want.
And it's about the school you want. That's the key, because this policy will take away choice. So there are a lot of parents who send their kids maybe to the local fee-paying school because they don't like the local state school. They can't get them in the state school that they want them to go to. It's a myth that it's all gazillionaires who've got their kids at private school. It won't affect the gazillionaires. The billionaires' kids will still be able to go.
Eton will be fine. There won't be a child will be taken out of Eton.
It's the doctors, the lawyers, the teachers, like people who are in the professions who invest their money in their children's education, not always because they want to, but because they feel like the local school maybe doesn't suit the needs of that particular child.
It's a kick right in your aspirations, this policy.
It's a kick in your aspirations.
And it smacks of class envy.
Yeah. Emily Thornberry's attitude to this was yesterday made my skin crawl because it was
so what?
It was sneery and it was unkind and it didn't give any consideration to the children who may have to leave the school and go to one they don't want to go to. That's the issue. And also the Lib Dems are announcing their policies, their manifesto
Can't
this
wait for
morning
that.
live in our show.
That'll be exciting.
Ed Davey.
Do you think he'll be wearing a wetsuit?
I was going to say, is he going to be doing it?
Every other day.
He'll be doing it on the water.
On a bouncy castle, maybe.
Maybe he'll be dressed as a bumblebee to hide the fact that British bees are dying. They are yellow.
Although I have to say, I do think Daisy Cooper, when they roll out Daisy Cooper, the deputy leader, I think she's very good.
Yeah, she struggled today to say, is it still an issue for do the Lib Dems still want to go back into the European Union? They do. Just admit it.
But in the leaders' debate on Friday night, I thought she was good. She's articulate, she's impressive. But yes, she absolutely is obfuscating around whether the Lib Dems would take us straight back into the EU.
They don't want to talk about Brexit, these parties, do they? Labour and the Liberal Democrats.
I don't get that, though, because I'm sure that if the Lib Dems came out and they said, right, one of our policies, we will have another referendum on the EU, all those people who want to go back would probably vote for them.
Well, Europe are lurching to the right there, aren't they? So if we are really going back into the EU, I don't think it will be the sort of lefty policies that they're expecting.
I agree.
And if Macron's gamble fails and Le Pen's not win the election, there could be a referendum in France in a few years' time on whether they stay in the European Union.
Well,
Wouldn't that be extraordinary?
It's going to be an exciting show.
Really?
It's packed. Andrew and Bev, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. And Eamonn and Isabel will be back here from 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. But as you just heard, up next is Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Bev. Thanks for your company this morning. Have a good day.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M6 in Lancashire is partly blocked northbound by an accident between junctions 32 and 33 from the M55 to the A6 south of Lancaster, causing delays. There are delays of up to an hour with some cancelled trains between Leeds and York after a signalling problem at Harrogate. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, there's a lane closed westbound between junctions 25 and 24 from Brighouse to Amy Top because of animals on the road causing queues. In Leicestershire on the A50, the inside lane's closed eastbound for repairs after an accident between junction 1 and the M1 at Long Eaton, queues towards there. In London, Lambeth Bridge is closed for an investigation, and on the Isle of Wight, Sandown Road in Shanklin is closed because of an accident, and train services are suspended between Shanklin and Ryde Pierhead because of a faulty train. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
The Princess of Wales has reportedly been out and about, enjoying days out with her family, while she continues to undergo her treatment for cancer.
And Buckingham Palace says they have been inundated with tens of thousands of get well soon cards and gifts for the princess.
Yes, I can imagine so. Now we're joined by former royal correspondent at The Sun, Charles Ray. Charles, how do they know she's been out and about with her family?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. It's interesting, yes. I mean, how do they know that she's been out and about? No pictures have been seen of the princess out and about. And I'm surprised that with all the people who've got camera phones, that she has been that out and about, that we haven't seen her. But anyway, we have to accept that she is out and about. She's with her family. But the palace are making it quite clear, pointing out that this should not be confused with her returning to work anytime soon. There are even some suggestions that she won't return to work probably until the autumn, and there's one suggestion that may not even be till next year. Like her father-in-law, she's not sitting at home with her feet up watching daytime TV. She is actually working. She's actually doing things
And yet, this is a difficult time, of course, for the royal family to navigate everything. The King has cancer, the Princess of Wales has cancer, and we're in the middle of a general election campaign where the royal family have to be very, very careful about where they go, what they do and what they say.
Sure. And as you quite rightly say, Tom, I mean, things have had to be cancelled in any case. So during this next 6 weeks, we are not going to be seeing any members of the royal family doing as much as they possibly can or can do prior to a general election.
The People's Channel.
Good morning, 9:30 on Monday the 10th of June. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Good morning, thank you for joining us. So Labour Party split. The Shadow Education Secretary slams frontbencher Emily Thornberry for saying that their plan to impose a VAT on private school fees would increase class sizes in the state sector.
And tributes are being paid to the TB doctor Michael Mosley after his body was found after a 4-day search in Greece. He was just yards from safety.
And is the EU in meltdown? Emmanuel Macron called a snap election last night after a resounding defeat in European elections. He's warned that the hard right is progressing everywhere in Europe.
And unite the right. That's the message from the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, as she calls on Tories to embrace Nigel Farage.
And hospitals under attack. The NHS issues an urgent blood donation appeal after last week's cyber attack leaves hospitals in London struggling to match patients. Let us know your thoughts this morning, gbnews.com/your. So Michael Mosley was a writer on the Mail newspaper, of course, with you.
He was often in the building,
Yeah.
and he was just, I didn't know him very well, but he was just a lovely bloke. He would stop and talk to anybody.